The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chasers. Like I do about this time, I want to give a shout out to all of the members of the Green Gorilla channel. I want to give a shout out to Shop Talk Live, Jones Boy, Ryan Jackson, The Face, Mr. Heat, David the Man, Afro Analyst, NEU, Ronan Martin, Black Quizzard, ADOS, Camp Low, Isa Abdul Sahir, Sir Anthony, Deshaun Nolly, Ab Media 83, Aaron Lloyd, Leroy Honeycutt, MLR, Julius Ferguson, Charles Rogers, Black Dog, Brother Love, Infamous Chillin', Universal 178, Black Squirrel 404, Rashid Barnes, Aaron Smith, DH, C Truth the Revelator, The Gold Professor, The Nameless Protagonist, Black Pill Ned Stark, Arthur Unknown, Odd Khaled, Roderick Jackson, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, Brian Williams, Kalon Jakala, Sherrod Martin, Ricky Dawson, Cedric Bowman, True 7360, BK Bourne Shaheed, James Washington, Hostile Adept, Seventh Coast Dojo, W. Pierre 1, Rogish the Billmonger, I Care, Force Windu, Lady Miss Thing Green, BGS Ibmore, and Marvin Battle Jr. Thank you so much for being members of the Green Gorilla channel. Thank you for being members of the Green Gorilla channel. I really appreciate all of your support and all of your help. Thank you. It goes into helping me improve the quality of the Green Gorilla channel. And if you want to become a member of the Green Gorilla channel, here's how. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. Yeah, before I begin, I want to send out a reminder one more time. The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. Yeah, I just want to get that out of the way. So today I'm joined with 2 guests. I have the incomparable and the indomitable Ronald Neal and the astounding and stupendous scholar, Dr. Ronald T. Hassan Johnson. What's going on, fellas?
Hey, what's going on? G with the PhD.
What's going on, fellas? How y'all doing, man?
What's good with you, man?
Hey, man, they ain't know you was coming on today, man. So this is a treat. You know what I'm saying? They had no idea. I also got Marcus is supposed to be joining us. I don't know what happened. He stepped out, but who knows? He might make an appearance again. But
All right.
what I want to do today is have a conversation about Jeezy and Gucci Mane. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the Chrome tab really quickly if I can. And I don't know if y'all can see that. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is an article that yours truly wrote because I just started a damn blog, man.
All right, all right.
That's what's up.
Yeah,
That's
man.
what's
So
up.
I got a channel. It's called thegreengorillachannel.com. If you
Yes, sir.
want to see my content on the Green Gorilla channel, it's also on a website instead of just being on YouTube. So here you have Gucci Mane and Jeezy. And recently they just did a versus battle this weekend. So, you know, it was all popular and, you know, a lot of people got involved in watching it, and they had stream parties and all of this. And then, you know, there was guest appearances before the the versus battle by a political Democratic operative. I won't say the name just yet. But so anyway, man, the title of the article I wrote is "Juicy and Gucci Mane should be praised for burying their beef," and I'll just read part of the article. I won't read it all, but I'll read part of it so that you can get the context in which I'm making my claim. So anyway, man, you got rap aficionados, and if these people haven't been living under a rock for the past 15 years, they know that Young Jeezy and Gucci Mane have been involved in a beef that's lasted for nearly 2 decades. Now the smoke kicked off between these two, and I call them trap stars because they are trap stars. Uh, After Gucci Mane and Jeezy recorded a song called "So Icy" in '05. Now the story goes as follows. Okay, so you got Jeezy who's hanging out with BMF, the Black Mafia family, and then you got Gucci Mane who's a street guy in Atlanta, and they come together and they record this song, right? And Jeezy gets signed to Def Jam, and he wants to use the song, which was beginning to pick up and gain momentum on his debut album, Let's Get It, Thug Motivation 101, which, by the way, is a classic trap music album. It is, okay? But Gucci basically wanted to use the track for himself, and so he ended up putting it on this independent premiere called Trap House. Now, basically, Jeezy apparently took pause or umbrage with that decision, and since that time, both Jeezy and Gucci have gone on to enjoy tremendous success in both their respective careers in the entertainment industry. However, they've both been involved uh, after some exchanges in a dangerous game of threats, disrespect, violence, and I didn't put it in the blog piece, but even death. Okay, uh, and that is until the recent Jeezy versus Gucci rap battle took place. And I don't have time to go into all of the intricacies of the vendettas that they have with one another over the years, but I do want to take some brief amount of time to discuss what the burying of their beef with one another signals to other young black men in similar circumstances. Okay? So that's what I want to have a conversation about. And that's why I brought you two on, because you're scholars, you study black men. And one part that I do want to read is the stats on black male homicide. Okay. Now it shouldn't be a secret that the leading cause of death for black males between the ages of 15 and 34 is homicide. Between 1999 and 2018, and I got this information from you, Dr. Johnson, over 90,000 black males were homicide victims. 80 to 90% of these victims were killed by other black men. In 2017, homicide was the leading cause of death for black males between the ages of 1 and 44. Now, I'm citing these stats not to, throw jabs at black men or to talk about their innate and ontological pathology. But what I do want to disclose or point out is that um, these kind of problems that black men have with homicide, I think, are treatable, and they can be correlated with social and economic conditions and also psychological problems that black males have. And I think that, part of the psychological problem stems from the fact that there's a little bit of internalized hatred amongst black men owing to, the kind of images that are projected towards black men in the media uh, and the way black men are viewed by people in the larger white society. So if the images that you receive over and over again are deprecating images of yourself and your life chances, then you become a little bit fatalistic and nihilistic to some degree. And what I want to do is draw a parallel to the dial test. Black people have a lot of internalized disdain for one another and for themselves. And so they act that out writ large on one another. That's just a theory, okay? Uh, and again, the social economic piece is you got a group of people who are struggling and striving to make ends meet. That they are often in poverty, and they resort to clandestine and sometimes criminal means by which to, gain success for themselves or to gain, the capacity to provide for themselves and to even, appear to be functioning and flourishing in their respective environments. So, what do you have to say about that? And what do you think about their ability to resolve some of these issues? And I'll leave that to open to any one of y'all who want to make a comment on it.
Well, let me add a little bit of this too. You know, the stat you read is definitely accurate, but when you expand the age of homicide for Black men between that same time period, 1999 to 2018, from age 1 to age 54, you have over 144,000, almost 145,000 Black men killed. And you're absolutely right; it's over 90% by other Black men. But I think these issues are environmental, and they're very much tied to environmental issues, particularly when you start talking about, poverty, impoverishment, homelessness, unemployment. I mean, we know Black men, before COVID were unemployed at rates over 40 and 50 cents, at 40 and 50% in over 30 major cities, right? So, with these kind of environmental issues come these kind of things. I mean, this is the bottom line to it. I mean, Black men earn about, when you control for incarceration, we earn about 51 cents on every white male dollar. Right? I think we're at like 67 cents when you don't include incarceration. Black women are at about 63 cents. White women are about 75 cents, all on the white male dollar. But when you control for incarceration, we're at about 51 cents. So these issues tend to go hand in hand with lack of opportunity, lack of access, lack of options. And they are unfortunately to be expected. And as you say, when you look at this, when these are the conditions applied to your community multi-generationally, it adds a whole nother dimension to the problem, because it becomes something that you've grown up seeing, your father's seen, your grandfather's seen, in one way, shape, or form, in the context of their time period and their environment. So, if we're going to, talk about how we overturn this, there's an environmental policy-based approach to this that has to happen. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of drop that in.
Okay. Thank
And
you for that.
I would add this and to Dr. Johnson's reflections. So
Can you step a little bit closer, Ronald? Can you step a
can
little
you
bit
hear
closer
me?
to the mic?
Can you hear me?
I can barely hear you. You sound
Hold
like you're
on, hold on,
distant.
hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Let me see if I can get this. Turn this mic up. How about that?
That's better.
Good. Okay. So the first principle of economics is scarcity. Scarcity. And I think it's important for us to understand that the problems of Black men, the tensions between Black men that we have seen over the decades, the violence, the death, homicide, all these things can be understood in relationship to this principle of economic scarcity. We are competing with one another over scarce resources. Men kill each other over limited capital. And we are the men, Black men, who have the least capital in this society. And we live in close proximity to one another, and we compete with one another for that limited capital. And so the deaths, the homicide, all these things, the beefs are very much tied to that. And I think what amplifies it is what Gigi has said is the self-hate, the internalized misandry, the internalized hatred that we have, that is amplified economically. The drive for each of us to one up each other, to outprove one another, to prove our manhood to one another, to impress women, all these other things, to strive to approximate American ideals of manhood and all those sort of things. So I do think that there's a confluence of factors and elements that are involved, but the fact that we are a deprived population, our access is so limited, and that we live in a competitive system of American capitalism really accounts for much of the plight that we experience.
Okay. Great assessment. I want to also bring in, I got my brother Marcus Aurelius, keep it 100 here. Marcus, man, have you been listening? Because you were here for a minute and then you cut out and then you came back in. So,
Yeah,
well, what's your thoughts about this?
I mean, I had a phone call. You know what I'm saying? So I took that real quick. Now we talking about Jeezy and Gucci, correct?
Correct. And for the most part, what I did was I didn't go through all of the details of their beef with one another, but what I did was I set out the context in which this beef came to the fore. You got two young black men, both of them involved in illicit activity, both of them from impoverished environments, both of them trying to improve their condition or also trying to prove their worth as men in impoverished conditions. And so ultimately, they get into a beef. And typically, when men get into arguments, sometimes it results in violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But men are so quick to defend and to demonstrate their manhood by means of violence, but they're very slow to forgive one another and to reconcile when there's been some sort of wrong or perception of wrong doing having been made. So, what's your assessment, about the condition of black men, the kind of violence that can spill out, and what are some of the sources or the causes of such
I mean,
actions?
I heard some of what Dr. Neil was saying. On a grand scale, bigger than this Gucci Jeezy thing. You know, it's the self image that we have of each other. You know, I mean, we discussed this where like we're quicker to forgive everyone else than we are to forgive each other. Um, you know, we get murdered by everybody. You know what I'm saying? Everybody, we hugging people in the courtrooms and things like this. Forgiving people for, our Christian salvation and these sorts of things. Um, but there's none of that is reserved for us. None of it.
Right. And, that's interesting because, you allude to the fact that, time and time again, you'll see a police having killed someone and the mother or the family members somehow, providing some so-called healing in terms of, the circumstances surrounding the death. You often see that. Or recently there was a brother who was bird watching and he for the most part, had the police sicked on him. After
Hmm.
which he
Right.
forgave her for that, that endangerment that he was placed in by her for whatever reason uh, she was feeling that day. And so you see this quickness. I won't even say a quickness, but at least a willingness to forgive white people for engaging in reprehensible actions towards black people. But we hardly, if ever, are able to extend the olive branch to one another, right? And so I guess the causes of this, as Dr. Ronald Neal said, might have something to do with a bit of internalized hatred, but that hatred stems, I think, from the overarching uh, image that's projected out there to us is that our lives are not valuable, our lives aren't worth anything, that who we are in terms of our dignity it's not high up on the totem pole. So, Dr. Johnson, you got anything else to say about this?
No, I mean, I think you hit it. We in that vein. I think black men are going to have to take up for one another at the end of the day. I mean, I'm often want to say, there's nobody else coming for us. You know what I mean? Ain't nobody else coming. And when they do come, they come for very specific needs, whether it be, our vote or whether it be our deaths, but they come for something specific and they use those things for their own benefit. So at the end of the day, black men are going to have to actually be able to develop something amongst ourselves because, it doesn't seem like too many folks have a vested interest in doing so for any altruistic purposes, at least any that benefit us in the long run. So we're going to have to do this. and we're gonna have to find a rationale that sticks amongst us, because there's no other means.
Yes, brother.
And,
Go ahead, doctor.
what I want to say about this, I'm thinking about Gucci Mane and Jeezy, and I'm thinking about 2000 because I remember that year and that moment vividly. I was a young professor in South Carolina at HBCU. I remember those years because my students were blasting Jeezy and Gucci Mane relentlessly. They were on the radio. I remember that vividly. Um, think about this. You're talking about young black men who have limited capital, limited opportunity. Rap music, rap music is a one in a million enterprise. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like football, it's like basketball, the NBA, the NFL. You know what I'm saying? What else? What else do you have to fall back on? What else do you have to fall back on if this thing does not work? Okay. And so the thing about it is that their beef is amplified by that. It is amplified by the fact that they've been deprived, okay, and that fuels the competition. It fuels the anger. It amplifies whatever self-hate exists and what have you. It becomes a do or die situation. It's just a dire situation. I've looked at Jeezy. I mean, I've got Source magazines. I've got Vibe magazines. I've watched these guys since 2004, 2005. Okay, and these guys had their backs up against the wall. Okay, and so I can understand. I can see how they were just cutthroat in terms of their competitiveness. You've got Def Jam versus Big Cat, LaFleur Entertainment. You have an independent label versus a major label. Who's going to get credit over a song and all this kind of stuff? This can make and break a person's career and the trajectory. So, I think that those larger elements in terms of black men vulnerability and precarity are all caught up in all of this.
Right. So there's a brother here named Me Styles, and he says, "Word on the street, Jeezy put a hit on Guwap Chain, unsuccessful attempt, left Jeezy homie catching hot ones. Streets ain't for everybody; they made for sidewalks." Uh, and look, let me just say this. Look, I'm from the hood, just like anybody else, and I've seen shootouts. I have people that I know that have killed people, right, and people who are going to prison. They'll never come back. They're there for life. Okay, I've known people who've been shot. I've been shot at. Um, so this is serious business here, man. This is not a joke, and this could happen to any black man at any time. The
Right.
situation is just that tense, and the precariousness of black males' lives is just that high. Okay, and it is the case that Jeezy recorded a song that ended up on his I don't know if it was on a mixtape or if it actually was on Thug Motivation 101. But in the song, he states some things that are pretty disrespectful about Gucci, and he says, "Well, I'll give you $10,000 if you bring me this fool's chains, or if you knock his head off." Okay, and ultimately, this one of Jesus' associates or one of the people that he knows went and tried to rob Jeezy and get the chain, and I mean not Jeezy but Gucci, and get the chain, and Gucci ended up shooting him and killing him,
Mm.
in order to defend his life. I mean, if somebody comes in your home and tries to take something from you, or even just their presence alone in your home would prompt you to defend yourself in a violent manner. But all of this comes about through this competition, through this animosity that had built up between them. Now, one of the things that I do want to say also is that the older you get as a black man, the likelihood that you will die from homicide diminishes greatly after you reach the age of 40. Okay. Now, both Jeezy and Gucci Mane are 40 years old. Okay.
Mm.
And that says something about the age at which this kind of violence is playing out.
Mhm.
And it says something about the conditions of the minds of young black men and how they deal with conflict,
Mhm.
and the idea that you have to handle conflict through gunplay, through the kind of violence that will result
Mhm.
in death is problematic.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as a young boy, look, I'm almost 50 years old. Not to say that there weren't guns in the neighborhood when I was a young boy. There were.
Right.
But until the 90s, the late 80s, the early 90s, you don't start to see the kind of influx of this kind of violence, or the uptick of this kind of violence. And when you start to see it, it it has begun to diminish to some degree. But at any moment, it could flare up again, right? Given the tensions. And so, what do we do to these young guys? Because it's typically young men that are doing this. And recently, you got three rappers who've been killed. You got Pop Smoke, right?
Mm.
Up and coming rapper, life taken away in his prime. Just when he was about to get on and start to take off and gain some modicum of commercial success, life ended. You get King Von, young guy from Chicago, just got on and had begun to do his thing and rise through the ranks of the rap industry or the music industry. And then you got some guy named Mo3 or Mo3, who was an associate of Lil Boozy the Badass, and he had begun to gain some modicum of success himself. But then these guys find themselves in these situations. I mean, and most of these guys are from these environments. Okay, they start to make a little money, and they start to gain a little notoriety, and then other men see this and become inflamed. They get envious and jealous about this sometimes, and it doesn't help when you got someone with a loudspeaker, and which is what rap music is, a loudspeaker, right? For them to aim or to hurl insults at people whom they have minor disagreements with, they get escalated, right, into situations in which you can see the loss of life. So, anybody want to weigh in on that, man? What about
So,
the youth, man?
so here's the thing. Here's the thing. So what we understand is that really, when we talk about black men, homicide is a young man's game. It's a young man's game. So when you look at the prison populations, you look at the black men who have been sentenced to life in prison for violent crimes. The vast majority of those black men commit those crimes when they were under the age of 25. Okay, those men were between the ages of 16, 15, 16, 25 years of age. A moment, a period in one's development when you're impulsive, where you're not thinking about the future, where you are driven by immediate gratification, all sorts of drives that are just shaped by your immaturity. Okay. And what we learn is that, yeah, you're absolutely right. As people get older, the tendencies to engage in this sort of violence diminish, they decline. Once you get past the age of 35, you become less prone to this type of violent activity. Okay. So we understand that violence, this type of violence is primarily a young man's game. And unfortunately for people like particularly young, not young Jeezy, but particularly for Gucci Mane, he has been spared the fate of lots of black men who are confined for the rest of their lives, because they either, in an attempt to defend themselves, or they were aggressors, took someone's life. So yes, I think there's a larger context to talk about it. We have to talk about young men and young men's propensity to engage in this type of activity, and the type of impulses that involve, the egoism that's involved, proving yourself to other men, toughness, hardness, whatever you want to call it, survival, not just that, but also survival, man. A lot of it has to do with survival. Okay. And brothers walking around with guns. Because I'm be honest with you, man. I got guys who I grew up with. I grew up in Miami who are doing life sentences right now. Okay, and there are guys who I grew up with. They're doing life sentences because they carry guns in order to survive. And then there were other guys who were doing life sentences because they were outlaws, they were cowboys, okay, and they got caught up before the age of 25, and they're never coming home.
You know, and
Let
and
me,
and I'd like to add something. Gigi, you brought up the early '90s, and one of the other elements I want to add to this happened just a few years prior to that that influenced all of this. See, a lot of people, especially my critics will say, "Well, why don't you talk about, what black men do to each other? Why don't you critique them? You're always talking about everything, but you don't ever hold them accountable." It's not that I don't hold black men accountable. It's that, as far as the derogatory critiques about black men, you got plenty of people to do that. I'm interested in the larger framework. I'm interested in the environment. So when you talk about hip hop, for example, there was a time period before record industries got involved where you could listen to hip hop and you could listen to anything covering vegetarianism to abstinence from sex, from the gangster element to parties, from philosophical inquiry to debate. Like there was all kinds of hip hop. There was a particular point in time, late 80s, 88, 89, most particularly, where you started to see the record company influence on what was regarded as hip hop, what got it, who got a deal and who didn't, who made the radio and who didn't, who got an album and who didn't. That had a huge impact. And by the time you hit the real early 90s, and this is something that is real interesting to hear because you can hear R&B singers talk about this whole time period. You can look up interviews from everyone from New Edition to to Mint Condition, and they can talk to you about when their whole industry was gone, and a lot of that had to do with the popularity of quote unquote gangster rap, right? But that was a mechanism. That was a record company construct when they decided which artists would get play. Not only does that change the game, it changes it changes those who want to get on in terms of what they even talk about, and it streamlines the field of who gets play. So that in turn impacts what gets on MTV, BET, the local radio stations, the national station, whatever. That shapes all of that. And then you end up getting down. Now you trickle down to what is it the kids are digesting in the media. So when we talk about this, we always talk about hip hop just in terms of black men's responsibility and what they are or aren't doing. And even black women for that matter. Like the latest beefs we've heard in the last few months about, Cardi B and the songs she puts out and what that says about black femininity. But we often sidestep the institutional influence that determined which artists are even going to get played. They determine the aesthetic standard that we use to even decide what we're going to listen to, which albums we're going to support. Those kind of influences have to be part of the discussion, and they have to be held accountable because that created a funnel on what got through and what didn't. And now you have now thanks to the internet, you got a lot of people that can function independently, and you can actually be a successful artist, but the mainstream public doesn't even know who you are because you don't need as many people to be successful, especially if the majority of the finances from your sales go directly to you. So that can happen now, but that doesn't mean we know about those people as readily as we know about the people we see in mainstream media. So we do have this era where you can be independent and you can use the internet to build yourself, but it's still a matter of, whether or not we know who you are. And so that becomes a factor. But I think the real push to hold these institutions, these companies accountable in this narrative is incredibly important.
And I want to add, let me just add to what Dr. Johnson has said. If we go back to 2005, we go back to 2004, if we go back all the way to 2002, Get Rich and Die Trying, okay, I mean, that was a moment. So we had a moment we were shifting from primarily gangster rap. Gangster rap is beginning to decline. So you have gangster rap reaching its crescendo with 50 Cent, with Get Rich and Die Trying. And then after that, it begins to shift towards primarily the dope dealer, the drug boy, the trap rap. So it's after 50 Cent, that's when trap music begins to take off. That's when, and Def Jam was very much a part of that. And that's when you have this intense commodification of the drug dealer and the drug gang. It was already there. I mean, we saw that with Eazy-E and NWA back in 1986. But by the time you get to 2004, 2005, because remember, Rick Ross is coming out at that particular time. At that time, you got T.I. is coming out with trap music. T.I. drops trap music around 2004, 2005. So this whole dope boy rap thing begins to mushroom as this major lucrative enterprise. And then it shifts from California, the music shifts from California gangster to the South. You got all this stuff happening in Atlanta. You have other states that are coming in. You got UGK, that's a part of it as well. You have all these other voices from the South. And you have this intense commodification of the dope boy thing. Jay-Z, both Jay-Z and 50 Cent begin to monopolize and capitalize rap. 50 Cent, he gets Young Buck. Jay-Z starts jumping on all these on these traps, these trap raps with these rappers. Jay-Z, the thing about you is interesting. So Jay-Z appears on every Jeezy album, pushing Jeezy. Okay, and so that intensifies this commodification, and it amplifies the competition that exists among these black men, which as a consequence creates this type of destructive tension.
And the interesting thing about that is, um, so at the time in which Jeezy came out with Thug Motivation 101, Jay Z was the president of Def Jam,
Just
and
just a,
so he is the catalyst for bringing Jeezy to to acclaim and to success. He's responsible for it, and of course, trap music in one form or another has existed, since the inception of rap music, to some extent. Not like it did after the 2000s. But you did have, again, you mentioned UGK. UGK was like early 90s. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I remember the Pocket Full of Stones song. You know what I'm saying? So, but the popularity, and Jay Z is also responsible for bringing UGK to a
Mhm.
larger audience
Yeah.
with the Big Pimpin' record, because
Mhm.
UGK has always been like a Southern, classic
Mhm.
popular rap group,
Mhm.
but they weren't driven into mainstream success until Jay Z, gives them his stamp of approval.
Mhm.
Um, but
yep,
not to get off track though. But you want to say something more, because I thought you were about to chime in.
yeah, because we talking about the record industry and what the companies are influencing and things like that. Now, G, you got a background in the music game. I also have a background in the music game, especially in New York. And I've been in these companies, offices, and things like that. I spoke to these executives, and they've been on their street teams and in their studios and all of that, this type of stuff. We can sit here and we can talk about what they were navigating hip hop into all we want, right? We can do that, but we can't act like the audience isn't demanding a certain subject matter in the music. Okay, so when dudes is doing gangster this and gangster that, and then you got dudes going multi-platinum, we can't then turn to the company, like, because we talking about holding record companies responsible. Record companies are there to make money, period. So if you put out Most Def or Talib Kweli and that shit don't sell, and then you turn around and put out Pop Smoke or one of these gangster dudes and it goes out of this world, what do you want the record label to do? To say, well, nah, we gonna put out some
Mhm.
happy-go-lucky hip-hop
Mhm.
But
because
what,
that's where hip-hop needs to go? Or are you gonna put out what the audience is buying? Like when Spike Lee went at Tyler Perry, he also said, well, Tyler Perry's movies do very well. So what does that say for the audience?
Mm-hmm.
We come
But
from an environment that's
Mm-hmm.
gangster.
Mm-hmm.
but hold
That's
on.
where we come from. So
But hold
people,
on.
you know what I'm saying? Does somebody want to jump in? Because I
Well,
got
yeah.
to say.
What I was trying to add to that though is what I'm talking about is kind of a meta critique, because here, by the time, so you mentioned Black Star, right? Talib Kweli, Mos Def. How many years had the audience been primed for what the record companies were already selling? That's, see, what I'm talking about is, we talking about a chicken before the egg kind of dynamic. You got a structural mechanism that is priming an audience. So after 10 years of that, yeah, if you come up with one group that's doing something that isn't going with the flow, yeah, it may not have an immediate impact, but that doesn't excuse the years of priming. And let's also add to that, prior to serious record company influence, for the most part, hip hop was something that was pretty much limited to Black and certain aspects of the Latino community, right? You went gold, it meant that Black people were buying your album. But, in order to start pushing beyond that, what record companies really did is they shifted the focus. They
Now,
shifted the focus. They didn't keep the focus on a purely Black audience. They started catering particularly to a white audience that had no interaction with Black folk, because that's where the dollars were. So when you
understood.
ask the question, who wants, who do you sell this to? Well, they created the audience by tapping into notions of Black maleness that go back damn near to slavery, and then prime the audience after creating that for a very particular type of appetite.
I don't know. I don't think that there was this master plan that we talk about here. Let me tell you something. I remember when these things were coming out, these labels were scared of this music. They were scared to put that out because they was worried about losing sponsorship. They was worried about their partnerships and things like that. But when they put that music,
But they
NWA put
weren't
this.
worried about
No,
album sales
no. Listen to what
in
I'm
the
saying.
suburbs.
It got there later. When NWA came out, nobody knew that they was gonna do what they did. They was getting no radio play. They didn't want to play these dudes' records on the radio. They were scared of it. Okay, so it's not like they sat in some back room and said, "Yo, we gonna turn hip hop into something gangster and capitalize." What happened was, these dudes dropped this record independently, because that's what happened. They dropped this record independently, wasn't getting no spins, no nothing, and it went bananas. And then these dudes said, "Yo, we got something here. I think this is the direction we need to go. We need another one of these so we can capitalize." It wasn't something that they created, bro. That
But the
was that.
question is, what brought in the white dollar?
Yeah.
What
What
brought in
brought
the
it?
white dollar?
Well. What brought in the white dollar was the success, the unexpected success of the street music,
It was the
because they didn't want to
crossover.
touch it.
It was
What's
the
that?
crossover. I think it was the
That's well,
crossover when
we
they
saying the
saw.
same
So
thing.
let's go back. Let's go back to the chronic. Let's go back to the chronic. Okay.
I'm talking about before
Or
that.
even before that, Doggy Style. You got NWA, but look at the period. Look at the period from Straight Outta Compton, okay, to the Chronic. All right.
Mm-hmm.
It is clear that there was a crossover element that took place. White people, white youth, white kids shifted from, because the white kids, they were listening to Public Enemy.
Yeah,
Okay.
they were.
1989. They would listen to Public Enemy in 88, okay, and even in 1990 they would listen to Public Enemy, okay, but they were also offered niggas for life. They were offered they were also offered Doggy Style. They were also offered the DOC, okay.
See, y'all going too far into the future. Niggas for Life ain't happened yet. You got to understand, when Easy Does It came out and they did Straight Outta Compton, they did all the other independent, because NWA and Easy E, they got a lot of independent records that happened before Straight Outta Compton. Okay, like listen, Public Enemy was selling. It was selling. They was making money from it. They didn't want to stop that. It was making money. They didn't want to fuck with the gangster shit. Pardon me for the profanity, but the gangster music, it was an unexpected success. They didn't want to touch it.
Yeah.
All right. So I see people in the chat saying, "Yo, they took conscious music away." No, they was making money from conscious music, because at the time at that time it was cool to be conscious.
But wait a
So
minute.
when it was
Go
cool,
ahead.
no, listen to what I'm saying. When it was cool to be conscious, and they was making money from it. They was good with it until these dudes came out and did something, and it was an unexpected success from it. So everything y'all talking about as far as niggas for life and all that came later.
No, but what I'm saying,
Cop killer and
listen,
Can I add
all this other stuff that came later when these dudes seen it like, yo, okay, there's money to be made from this. This is another lane that we can make money from. So
Marcus?
Because I hear people say that, but I watch this go down. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not something that they created. This is something that happened as a fluke, and they said, yo, this
Marcus,
is money right here. We're gonna rock with it, but they were scared to touch it. They were scared to touch it. Even Luther Campbell, they were scared of all of this music. And when it started to pop off, they jumped on the ship with it. It wasn't something that we dictated that, not the labels.
But Marcus, the other part to this is what we keep talking about it solely in terms of trap music or early D-boy music. Look, it wasn't limited to that. Basically, what I'm arguing is that these record companies, when they decided to seriously get involved, at the end of the day, black audiences didn't have the dollar capacity that they were interested in. They didn't. The ones that had that dollar capacity. Look, I mean, let me finish. I know you got.
I got you.
But the dollar capacity they just didn't possess, and in many ways they still don't. The dollar capacity was in the suburbs. The dollar capacity was with these young white kids that didn't want to step foot in the hood, but definitely wanted to play the music. They definitely wanted to wear the clothing on one level or another. So when I talk about it, it's not just about drug dealing in the albums. It's really comes down to a certain type of black male aggression. It comes down because you could take this back to "I'm Bad" and LL Cool J. You know, it doesn't have to be limited to just who was talking about gangster shit. It was a certain type of black male image that they marketed and built upon it. The later development in the late 80s came about in terms of what we call gangster hip hop. But even prior to that, that black male aggression that goes back, I mean, you could take it back to the Brute in the early part of the 20th century. That was something that fascinated white audiences even when it came to jazz. Yeah. Jazz at the time was the hip hop in the early 20s, that was the hip hop of its time. And white audiences were fascinated with that dangerous black maleness. That's what record companies knew sold. Yeah. So I agree with you when you say the drug dealing element or the gangster element popped off in a whole new way, but it was still based on a very old idea about black male aggression that white folks find titillating and exciting.
What I'm saying doesn't. That what you're saying and what I'm saying can exist at the same time. It could be both right at the same time. What I'm saying is not in conflict with what you're saying. What I'm saying is, if that were the case, it would have been gangster from jump.
So hold on, before we go any further with this is a great conversation. I want to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back on the Green Gorilla channel. The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. We're back on the Green Gorilla channel. I'm the G with a PhD. And this is the place where we keep things real and we can express ourselves. Straight up, no chaser. I'm joined today with Dr. Ronald Neal, Dr. Tiasan Johnson, and Keep It 100 Marcus Aurelius. And we're having a conversation about hip hop, but in the larger context of Jeezy and Gucci Mane. So what I don't want to do is lose sight of that. But this is a very interesting conversation that we're having about hip hop. And truth be told, one of the biggest things that we have to be aware of when having this conversation, and I think Dr. Johnson has hit on this, and I understand Marcus's opinion because to some degree, I commiserate with his position. Okay, um, but the largest consumers of hip hop are white males between the ages of 13 and 30 years of age. Most people don't understand that. So and that's why black people like to think that this is our art form. And for the most part, we perform it. We're the predominant performers of the art form. But the persons who possess it in bulk are white boys. There and 50 Cent, he kind of encapsulated the idea of why it's so popular amongst white males, uh, and I think it rings true. And tell me if you agree with it. Hip hop is a way where white people can go on an intellectual or an imaginative safari. They
Mhm.
could look at the animals, but they don't
Mhm.
actually have to get up close and deal with them in their environments. They get a snapshot, a window into what black life is like related to these artists. Okay? Now, let me just say this. I have been a rap artist. I recorded music with Daz Dillinger. I recorded songs with MCA, Coolio. Okay, gangster rappers. All right. Now I'm not saying I'm a Crip. I'm not. Okay, but I've hung out with some Crip gangsters. Okay, I know a whole bunch of them. All right. A lot of this music is embellishment, it's artistry, it's a whole lot of things. Okay, it's braggadocio. It's again imaginative storytelling. It's not all exactly accurate, and these rappers are human too. Okay, at the end of the day, they're not just jungle niggas, you know, committing acts of savagery. They're human beings. They have families. They have situations in which they grew up. They're human beings. Okay, and oftentimes they get lost. That gets lost in translation as we have these conversations. Um, but I agree. Hip hop has always been to some degree uncouth, and I take it all the way back to its inception in New York. Um, you got Cool Herc, you got DJ Hollywood, you got different rapping DJs, and what they say is pretty raw. They curse, they talk about doing drugs. Chiba DJ Chiba, he was another formative, rapper. And they talked about weed and cocaine, Curtis Blow. I mean, so the drug element, the underground element was always there in hip hop because it came from people who were from the hood. Okay, so you're going to have hood tales being told. But hip hop didn't become popular until MTV began to pick it up and to circulate it widely.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, that's the point in which hip hop moved from being something that just black people consumed and knew about and loved and enjoyed to something that the world began to consume and enjoy. But I think what Dr. Tiasan Johnson is pointing out is at some point, because I remember in college, Tribe Called Quest was the shit to me. Okay, you don't hear about them killing and murdering. You hear the N word and you hear them talk about weed, but you don't hear them talking about murdering people. All right, De La Soul was the shit to me. Okay, um, there's a whole host of rappers who were not playing the violence line. All right, or using the violence line or the trope in order to sell records. But then all of a sudden, you get the West Coast who come into play, and then the entire trajectory of the music changes. So, and it just doesn't, because you're right. I mean, you get, because I remember like the first record that Easy and E and them put out, I think was like Dope Man. That's the first single that I remember, right? But then you had Too Short as well. But his music wasn't about selling crack as much as it was him being a big pimp.
Pimping.
Yeah. So but as we look at the trajectory of the music nowadays, okay, so we know how it developed. We know that at some point the major record labels, there are only five of them. I mean, I remember, being a youth, somewhere around 24, 25 years of age, wanting to be a rapper myself, wanting to be successful myself, and then coming to the realization that out of all the record labels that exist, or what seemingly exists, there's only five major record
Might be
labels. There's
less
only
now.
five major distribution outlets for the music industry. I mean, of course, the game has changed now, but I'm talking about back then, right?
Yeah.
Where you get the mass success of NWA, Dr. Dre, um, who, I mean, you name it, man. I mean, Outkast, all these records. And Outkast is another group of guys who they started off with the pimp shit, and they started off talking about killing and doing drugs, but then they evolved. So then the question is there a space for black men to evolve with the
Okay.
music that they're creating?
Well, can I
As,
can I
as,
pose a question?
go ahead,
Because it's
Doc.
actually a question that goes to all three of you. You started to touch on it, and I think it's important to Gigi's question. How many companies are there now? Because Marcus, you said it's gone down. I think that speaks directly to the answer of evolution through media entertainment, because we're being filtered through a smaller and smaller group of companies. But I am curious, what has it gone down to?
Well, okay, so
I'd say 3.
Is
some
it
people
is it
say
at
that.
3?
Some people say that they got either top five or the top four. So you got EMI, Sony Music Entertainment, Universal Music Group, and the Warner Music Group. Now, today. What I was going to do was do a show on Disney and talk about the six major entertainment companies in the world as it pertains to all entertainment, whether it be movies, television shows, whether it be print media, uh, television news shows, whatever the case may be. Okay, radio shows, the whole shebang. All right, but one could argue increasingly you start to see the homogenization of all forms of entertainment
Yeah.
as you increasingly see the number of major players in the entertainment industry diminish. Okay, so at the current moment, all you got is trap rap. This is all you hear. I mean, this is the sound. This and the subject matter, right, of lean, X, weed, thoughts, the whole nine. I mean, this is the predominant language and the terminology of the music. And I still look. Let me hold on. Go ahead. Say this again.
But here's the thing: we're talking about two artists, Young Jeezy and Gucci Mane, who are representative of the birth of this genre, which has dominated hip hop for almost 20 years. We're talking about trap. So you've got in the moment that they're coming out, T.I. is coming out in the era. Okay, Rick Ross is coming out in the era. In addition to Jeezy and Gucci Mane. Okay, the dope boy. There was an emphasis of the dope boy. Here's the thing. So Port of Miami comes out in 2005. Rick Ross. If you look at Rick Ross was not a dope boy rapper. Rick Ross was on Trick Daddy and Trina albums way before anybody knew who he was.
Yeah, I remember that.
He wasn't talking about slinging cane. Rick Ross was a backpack rapper. Rick Ross was hanging around Kanye West. He was not one of these trap people. Rick Ross made a decision. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to make money by talking about this drug stuff. This drug stuff is going to take me further than being like Q-Tip or being like Slum Village or being like Common. Okay, Rick Ross made a decision to do that.
The same
and
is true
that's
for Jay-Z.
and that's in the era of 2000, 2004, 2005, 2006. Okay, and he's doing that in the face of a market that is demanding trap music.
Mm-hmm. See,
And look,
that's what I've been saying. Like
and
the
look. Let me
same.
just say this. So
Go
we know that there's a market for this kind of music. Okay, but we know here's the real deal. And let's just tell the whole truth about this shit. Okay, so and before I say it, let me just say this. The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. I gotta throw that out there. All right.
Smooth.
I gotta throw that out there. Just in case there's somebody listening who doesn't want to hear the word shit. Okay. Look, man, we all know that the dope boy game started in New York. It didn't start in the South. Okay. The dope boy game started in New York City. At the time that like Big Daddy Kane and all them motherfuckers gained prominence in the hip hop industry before it blew up. All the niggas in New York who was blowing, them motherfuckers was making millions of dollars, bro.
I'm from Miami, girl. I'm from Miami, player. I'm from Miami. I told you, my boy. I am a Miami boy from the '80s.
And then, but you had Rick Ross. You know what I'm saying? Who was all? But he was from Miami. You know,
He is from Miami. He is from Miami. He was around there, mother. The kid. I went to school with the dope boys. I went to school with the drug dealers' children's, who he talks about in his music. I went to school with them motherfuckers. I knew them personally.
But here's the deal. So we talking about a game that came and went. By the time Rick Ross makes this music, first of all, he never had to suffer the effects of selling dope. Jeezy did, okay? Gucci Mane did. But by the time they enter into the dope game, right, or come to, you know, to deal with the rigors of that kind of game, the game had already been played out. How do I know this? Motherfucker, I sold dope my goddamn self. Okay, I'm not trying to say this as a means by which to push forward any street credibility, anything. It was a fucked up decision I made at a time when I was young, impulsive, and impressionable. Okay, I saw a lot of people around me doing the same shit, and they was making money, and they had cars and rims and shit on it, and all I was like was, damn, how can these guys make all this cash? I'm broke as shit. I'm supposed to be educated. I'm supposed to be this and that. I don't have anything. They got all the money. So I started following them and doing what they were doing. Okay? Now, but I paid the consequences for that because I ended up going to prison for it. Okay? Now here's the deal. We talking about 2000s. Rick Ross comes out when? At 2006 as the dope boy?
05.
06, 07, huh?
05, 06.
05?
Uh-huh.
Shit. I went to prison in early 2002. Okay? So by the time I get out, all this trap shit, because Ludacris was the hottest selling Southern rap artist when I went in. By the time I came out, Doug Motivation 101 was blaring in everybody's radio in the city, man. Okay? And I'm thinking to myself, these motherfuckers don't even know what kind of vicious game they caught up in. Because the game started in New York. It moved out to the coastal cities because those were the places where the dope could come in and out really quickly, really easily. Okay,
Port cities.
but by the time you get to the 2000s, the fucking the DEA, they already got this whole game on lock.
Of course,
this game is over with.
It's done. Yeah,
It's over. You're not. There's all the sales of narcotic products and making millions of dollars, like the idea that you could be a Nino Brown figure. That's done.
So
it's over.
GG.
Yeah.
Rick Ross, all his music is about stuff that happened in the '80s, the early '90s.
Exactly.
All of his stories about dudes that did work in the '80s and the early '90s. It has nothing to do with people who did stuff in the 2000s.
Yeah, but check this out, man. Understand this, and this is the point that I was making earlier, man. The subject matter in the music whether it was a part of the artist's life directly or not, comes from the environment we come from and is entertainment primarily for those people. Now, what happens or who consumes this after the fact, whether it gets signed to a big label or whatever, is an afterthought. Where it starts is from the environment that it derives from, these stories, these things. I mean, let's not act like when this music is created, that it is not our environment that says it's real because it's relatable to the environment. It's not something that comes in a vacuum or anything like that. This is the environment we're from.
You're right.
Oh, this is real street shit and real this and real that and yada yada yada. Whether Rick Ross is a real dope dealer or not, or whether Plies went to college, or the millions of other examples that I can name, you know what I mean? Whatever person was chosen to create this music is one thing, but the culture of the music and the events that is describing come from an environment that we are all familiar with.
Yes.
Okay, and then
Well,
once it comes into the mainstream sphere, then that determines who buys it, determines whether it would whether it makes money or not. So yeah, we buy it, we support it, but then also, like you guys already said, and I said, both of these things can be true at the same time. The mainstream audience picks it up, and then it makes money, and these guys in these offices say, yo, this shit is marketable, right? I'm not saying that the idea of the violent or aggressive black man started with hip hop. What I'm saying is, I remember a time when more aggressive hip hop music could not get radio play and it would not get signed to a label until they realized that it was millions involved. You could talk to your man, what's his name? The big Jew. We know who he is. What's this dude? From Def Jam.
You know, Rick Rubin?
Leo Cohen.
He's talking about Leo.
Leo.
Before Leo came into the game, it was hip hop to the hip of the hip hop, and then when Leo came in the game,
Marcus is right.
He put Run DMC in all black and chains and Adidas, and this was how it was in the park. Now y'all talking about this comes from New York. I'm from Brooklyn. You understand what I'm saying? So, and I'm not saying that to say that I know more than everybody, but what I'm saying is I remember all of these things happening in real time, the Kool Moe Dees and all that stuff, because the first rappers that were coming out, these street guys were looking at these guys like, these ain't the guys. This ain't what this looks like in real time. Like when we in the park, these guys that they're putting out, the Curtis Blows and the this ones and the that ones, the Sugar Hill gangs. We don't look like this in the street. We look like this. So then you got guys who started their own labels and started putting stuff out. But when it started to turn into money, you get all these outside people that are coming in the game and saying, look, this is the way this needs to go because this is where the money is. But it came from the environment. We created it we support it. Period.
But I don't think anybody's doubting that it comes. Nobody's arguing that it from the environment, though.
But what I'm saying is, it sounds, some of the stuff sounds like, a bunch of white people sat in a room and said, well, we're going to create this gangster rap image and push that out into the hip hop sphere. And it's going to get swallowed by white folks.
Hold on. Okay. Dr. Johnson, I want to get you in because you were trying to speak, and then Doc Neal.
I'm just gonna be gonna be brief. I think what's the interesting contrast between what Marcus and I are saying, and I'm from Brooklyn too. I was just raised in the Bay, so I saw it from a different vantage point there too, and I saw the West Coast come into hip hop. But anyway, one of the things I'm noticing is you're talking about how there wasn't this kind of white conglomerate that made these decisions. I have some differences with that.
No, you got to contextualize.
You got to let them finish, Mark.
Okay.
The only thing I'm trying to say is I think I hesitate to give the black audience as much power as we may want to, especially when you consider how little we actually control on the institutional end of it. The culture, of course, comes from us. Hip hop comes out of that. Nobody's doubting that. Nobody's debating that. But at the end of the day, because some of you said earlier, you said we all know where this comes from. And I'm like, that's an interesting statement. Because when I look at the majority of people consuming it, they don't know nothing about where it comes from other than what they've learned in music. Look, I took a trip in college to Korea, right? Never been to Korea before, had never had any aspirations to go to Korea. I went to Korea because of the uprisings in LA, and the Korean government was trying to invite black folk to try and smooth relationships, right? So I go to Korea. The first question we get when we get out there, 50 black students, 25 college, 25 high school. First question we get is, do we know OJ? Because the OJ shit had just happened. And are we friends with Snoop Dogg? And will we rap for them the way the Snoop raps, right? These are the questions we're getting. And one of the things that it really clued me into is you had gangs out there. You had Bloods and Crips in Korea banging over streets they ain't never heard of. And I was going to school in LA, so the streets they were talking about, I was working in Nickerson Gardens at the time, right? Which is directly in the hood. So I'm listening to these Korean kids banging over streets they've never heard of that I work on. And it really got me going about the impact of the idea of hip hop, but really how it translates to communities that know nothing about us, but they knew how to say nigga.
Understood. But I mean, we all grew up watching karate movies back in the day, and we thought every Chinese person we bumped into knew how to do a spinning kick. This is
but that doesn't get to the core of the question, though. Who determined what Chinese meant in the popular marketplace? Who determined what black meant? That's what I'm saying.
I understand that, but I'm not. What I'm speaking of is not in conflict with anything you said. Understand, Doc. I agree with everything you're saying, but what I'm saying is everything you're talking about is after the fact, right? And let me just respond to the first thing you said just now. You said that I said that there's no group of white people sitting in a room and making these decisions. I'm not saying that. I want to add context to that. What I'm saying is,
I'm sorry if I misunderstood you.
Yeah, there's no. I'm not saying that. I mean, there's boardrooms where like a Bobby Shmurda has to go and dance on a conference table to get a deal. I mean, I think a lot of us have seen that. But what I'm saying is they didn't create, I ain't talking about hip hop. I'm talking about the subject matter, right? The subject matter comes from a real place.
Okay.
And they grabbed hold onto it after the fact. It's not something that like we were saying about Candyland, and then
just real quick,
we're gonna make y'all into gangsters.
No, I hear you. I think here's the difference. What I'm saying, I wasn't saying they created it. What I said is they were the stopgap. They were the filter, right? That's what I'm saying. They were the filter.
If it makes money, it makes money.
Well, but there's a lot of things that could make money because we're also talking about how the audience was primed over time. You learn the vocabulary, you learn the aesthetic. That doesn't just happen to everybody. The music, look, I remember, and you remember as well, I'm sure, when you went to a different city and hip hop had a whole different sound, it had a whole different fashion. You even had a whole different set of graffiti depending on where you went. Texas to Florida to New York to LA were different. The music was different. You actually had local artists on the local radio station. When radio went national or regional and national, you saw the change.
But
now I'm seeing kids, no matter where I go teach, that are wearing the same clothes, listening to the same albums. That wasn't always how it was. So I'm simply saying that there was a filter that helped us become accommodated to a particular sound. I didn't say they created the sound.
But what we don't want to do, because there's a commenter in the comment sections who basically says, Green Gorilla, or you guys going to get back to the article topic? And I think that he's exactly correct about this, because we can get mired into this debate, and I already know, there's not going to be a resolvement of this issue. So we can pretty much move past it. But the idea is, hold on, man, we can keep going, retreading the same water, or we can move on. Okay, so look, he says, are you guys going to get back to the topic? Should Jeezy and Gucci be praised for ending the beef? We know it's street shit in the neighborhood, because that's the truth. Like we can lose sight of the fact, and we can talk, because it's important for me to understand, not for me, but for the people who are listening to understand. Jeezy and Gucci really actually lived. I mean, these guys, apart from hip hop, they are the embodiment of what trap music is. Okay, they are among its architects. They are the if you put trap music on Mount Rushmore, you would have to put T.I., Jeezy, and Gucci Mane on that motherfucker.
Okay.
Okay, that's who would maybe some other people might deserve to be there. But if anybody deserves to be there, Gucci and Jeezy and T.I. deserve to be there.
Can
Okay?
I say something?
They're the architects of this. These men have been involved in a beef for
Mhm.
over a decade and a half about something, right? Related to something that really isn't that important in the grand scheme of life itself.
Mhm.
Okay? They eventually, and we see this in the past, what this weekend, they are able to settle, even if it's a modus vivendi, like a tentative truce, they come to solve their problems on the world stage and let everyone who's in trap music, because they have acolytes, they have followers, okay? Just like the Joker has followers, Jeezy's got followers, Gucci's got followers, okay? Young guys who admire them, who look at them as gods, even call them gods, okay? They saw those two men get on stage last weekend or this weekend past, right? And they saw them resolve a decade and a half long beef that involved death.
Yeah.
Okay?
Can I say something?
Okay, go ahead, brother, and say something.
Let me say something. So I got up. It was 5 o'clock this morning. I was on my tablet and I was on YouTube and I saw an exchange between Timberland, the producer, Timberland out of Virginia, and Swiss Beats out of New York. And Timberland and Swiss Beats had this very interesting exchange. And it was led by Swiss Beats. And Swiss Beats basically said that what Jeezy and Gucci did was bigger than entertainment. Swiss Beats says that they did something for the culture, they did something for black men, they did something for black people. That is, when you put politics, the election 2020 aside, when you put all this stuff that's been surrounding the last 2 months aside, you have two artists, two black men in hip hop, world famous, rich, and the like, who decided to reconcile amongst each other. And Swiss Beats says, Alhamdulillah, he's Muslim now. Swiss Beats says that this sends a large message to black men, in particular, especially young black men. It is important to look at the bigger picture, that we should not get caught up in these frivolous, meaningless beefs that we have between one another. And Timberland co-signed everything that he said. When I listen to them, you can go, it's on YouTube, 15-minute conversation between Timberland and Swiss Beat, and they're talking about that time. Swiss Beat goes back to 2005. Timberland goes back to 2005. They understood the environment. They understood the intensity that was happening in Atlanta and across hip hop. And they are saying that this was a monumental moment, not just for hip hop, but for black people. They injected black people into it. I think
And
that's
that's
what you're hearing at.
and look, it's a beautiful thing to me to see. Okay? Because I'm from an environment where men shoot each other over problems. You step on somebody's shoe, you can get shot. You go to the club, there's an exchange related to a woman or something like that, you can get shot. I mean, I went to college in '89 in New Orleans. I ended up getting shot at in that area, like in New Orleans. But like I'm practically from New Orleans myself because I visited there every summer since I was like 4 or 5 years old. Okay. Your life as a black man, especially a black man or a black male between the ages of 13 and 35, it is precarious. That is the highest risk age group by which you might be subjected to homicide. And for Jeezy and Gucci, two of the architects of trap music, who've been involved in a decade and a half long beef, to say, look, if we can break this beef down and get rid of it and be done with it, and I will admit, Gucci is the one who has the most to, to get to forgive for, because he was attacked. Okay, I'm gonna tell you, it's hard when somebody tries to kill you to let it go, because that's real, man. Ain't nothing realer than life.
Hey, G, you know the funny thing is, I've been watching and reading a lot of things since this battle went down, and they trying to put Gucci in the seat like he's the the bad guy.
Yeah, I say the same thing. I say the same thing.
And yeah, and it's just interesting to see that they painting Gucci the bad guy when he was the one that was the victim. Like, they're playing Jeezy up like he's the bigger guy. Like,
No, that is not the truth. The person who had the most to risk in doing this whole thing was Gucci Mane. Yeah. Gucci Mane may have killed a man.
Yeah.
But he's the one that had to risk the most related to his life chances, his circumstances, all stemming around something that Jeezy set off into motion.
Yes.
Now, so I praise Gucci Mane for saying, look, you brought somebody out to hurt me, and I handled my business. But I'm gonna give it. But even during the battle, though, he does make mention of the fact I killed your partner. He played the song. Okay,
I ain't mad at it.
He played the song.
Let me say this, Gigi. There's something there's another layer here that we have to get at too. We have to get at, and that's black male trauma. And that is the fact that Gucci has had to live with the fact that he killed somebody.
Right.
He killed somebody. I don't care if it was it was out of self-defense and everything. But if you watch Gucci and you watch his trajectory and you watch his chaotic, his erraticness and all of that, I mean, you read his book. He has a book that came out about a year, 2 years ago about his life. The other books been written about him. That event had a traumatic impact on his life and everything he did after that. A man, we don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like to kill somebody. I don't know what it's like to take somebody's life. I don't know the psychological toll. I know he defended himself, but there is a psychological toll that happens to people who are involved in that type of situation. Okay? And when you watch everything, because Gucci eventually went to prison. He went to a federal prison for 3 years. Okay, and that federal prison stint changed his life radically, and all of it is connected to those moments. Okay, and so we have to talk about black male pain, black male trauma, and also when it comes down to Jeezy, man. When you listen to Jeezy's music, man, when Jeezy talks about the way he grew up, when Jeezy talks about his environment, when Jeezy talks about his mother and the betrayals and the usury and all of the traumatic stuff that we don't like talking about in terms of black men and their mothers, all that stuff plays into these dynamics. And so that's a part of the story that no one wants to talk about, the internal turmoil that black males live with, that amplify their conflicts with other black men, that elevate the trauma that black men deal with in American society.
And this is I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's easy to get on a microphone if you haven't lived this kind of life or haven't gone through these kind of circumstances and to glorify it and to sing about it, because it's the cool and it's the hip thing to do. But if you actually been to prison, that's traumatizing in and of itself. Okay? If you've been shot at, that's traumatizing. To have a gun pointed down or pointed at you, the sights aimed at you, it's traumatic, man. To shoot and kill somebody, that's dysfunction. I mean, it's one thing to go to war and to have to do that. It's another thing to be at war in your own environment. That's a problem.
PSTD.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. Or post-traumatic slave syndrome. I mean, but the reality of the situation is what they did, it might not have been the best display, right? Because it wasn't ceremonial. This is two black men from the trap. And we both know that they are from the trap. We know this. Okay? These are not Rick Rosses. These are two guys. I'm not no disrespect to Rick Ross, you know what I'm saying? I mean, whatever. But here are two guys from the hood who've been involved in gunplay and a whole bunch of other ignorant bickering back and forth in a blood feud for over a decade and a half, and they nipped it in the bud on a national platform on a versus battle.
That's major.
And I would hope, because this is the manosphere. Now, the one thing we do in the manosphere is we call black men Pookies and Ray Rays and all kind of other deprecating shit, and we say these men are less than. These men are the kind of men who need to be, put in incarceration. These are the kind of men who we can't look up to, and we can't model any activity in our own lives after theirs. These are the lower bottom barrel kind of men that we continuously complain about. But here, I want to say, here's a group of guys who, in this space, we would refer to as Pookies and Ray Ray. They did something right last weekend. They said, okay, look, this is bigger than us. Because now you got young men who are patterning their lives after the shit we did. Maybe they need to grow up like we grew up and pattern their lives after ours now, so that they can actually reach our age and enjoy a modicum of excess. Enjoy the accoutrements that come with the life that is possible. Because, I mean, look at Gucci Mane. Gucci Mane is married. He's healthy. Not drinking and smoking weed anymore all day.
Oh, my God.
I can't say the same for Jeezy. I don't know what he's doing. Okay? But I do know these men are functioning now in a way that they hadn't been able to do before. That is something we should praise. That's something we should look up to. Now, maybe their music is not perfect. Their lives haven't been perfect.
They reached the age of 40.
Yeah.
These are black men who reached the age of 40. So Jeezy is 43. Gucci is 40. They reached, that is significant. That is monumental. Particularly given their backgrounds and all of that. They reached the age of 40.
Yes.
I don't know how I don't know how to echo the significance of that.
Right.
Okay? In light of what black men have dealt with since 1980. Okay? Since 1980, they reached the age of 40. And these men, you're talking about married. Gucci is married. Gucci is living a life of stability. Jeezy is on his way, living a life of stability at the age of 40 after all of this stuff. There are few of us. And
Right.
there are few of us who get there. And I said this, I was on the YouTubers program, and I said this. I said, any black man who reaches the age of 40 and is still alive and still standing and who's able to tell his story has done something that is monumental. Any black man. And 20.
So we got a commenter named Anubis, who's named after a Kemetic god of the underworld. He said if the youngest ain't listen to the mothers and OGs, wouldn't make you think y'all youngest gonna learn. Think y'all think the youngest gonna learn from this. Let me just say this: they may not listen.
Right.
They may not. They may continue to look. Violence is going to happen in the world regardless. It's going to happen. It is. Somebody's going to get shot tomorrow. We know this. But what we have seen is that if you don't want to go through this, if you want to settle the beef, it's possible. That's what we see with this. Okay, now these are older men. They're not young. Okay, they're not as inclined to impulsivity as a young man is. But if they still respect, and I think that these young rappers do respect Jeezy and they do respect Gucci. I think they respect them. If they can squash the beef, it's possible for you to squash the beef as well. It's possible. Not saying it's going to happen, but it's possible. It can happen.
See, let me say something. I mean, we see these guys in their older age doing what they're doing, but there's a few things that happen as a result of, I guess, reaching age 40. It's like what Dr. Neal said earlier. He was talking about abundance and scarcity. These guys have more to lose now than they once did. Like when you coming from an environment where you have nothing and there's nothing to lose, and you don't think that you might live past 30, you're more prone to emotional outbursts and reactions and things like that, and beefs but once you get to a certain age where it's like, okay, the likelihood of you living longer outweighs dying earlier, then you have to think about other things. You understand? So, aside from us saying, is this, this big us putting all this, virtuous stuff on top of it. I mean, if you live past a certain age as a black guy, then there's other things to consider. Now you got to live real life, because when you're younger, you might be staying with moms or whatever. Like your thought process on survival is not the same as when you're in your 30s. You're in your 30s now. You got to deal with real life issues.
But you know what? This is what I
Yeah.
also say though.
So, and you also, one more thing I want to say. I'm sorry. And you also have more to lose.
Precisely. Yeah.
You have more to lose.
Hey Marcus, this is all true.
It's abundance. It's not.
This is all true
anymore.
This is all true.
Yeah.
Can't deny any of that. But one thing's for certain: you can't have anything to lose come your later years if you lose your fucking life in your younger years.
Absolutely.
So if a young man wants to understand what it's like to be successful and older and wants to actually aspire to live and to be functional, that little knucklehead motherfucker needs to listen. And and my thing is, who better to listen to than somebody you already respect anyway?
No, I understand. But
I mean, you can't change reality. I already said it. I already prefaced my statements by saying you can't change reality. Young guys are going to be impulsive. They're going to be, aspirants to prove their mettle and their worth through all kind of reckless actions. That's young men, okay? However, the reality of the situation is you got a group of young men who've been through it, and that are respected and are honored by a whole host of people in the community. Maybe if they would have done what they did earlier, maybe it could have stopped or prevented King Von and his Rondo Mongo problem. Maybe it could have prevented the situation between the baby and whatever the dude is that they had the little skirmish in the mall where the baby beat him up and made his pants come down. Maybe that wouldn't have happened. You know what I'm saying? The older guys in hip hop now need to get their ass together and try to school the young guys. Now, the young guys ain't going to listen all the way because, one thing about being young is you may as well, do what you need then because you don't already know everything. By the time you get old, you don't know shit. But, I mean, but the reality is, look, the older guys know more. They got more experience. These younger guys should be soaking up the game from these older guys so that they can enjoy the same lifestyle when they get to that age.
And this is much better. Here's the thing, and this is much better. So we're talking about a Gucci who is not in jail or in prison. We're talking about a young Jeezy who is not in jail or in prison or or homeless, probation, parole, whatever.
What's goody, fellas?
We're talking about men who are doing better than they've ever did in their entire lives. Okay, so we're talking about alternative. We're talking about alternative futures. So we're saying to these younger guys, listen, there is a different reality, and that reality is good, it's positive. You don't have to have the other type of option where you're talking about a meat, big meat, or you're talking about a Larry Hoover, or you're talking about these other icons of the street who will never ever get out of prison.
See, I'm gonna say this real quick before somebody else jumps in.
Would you put
we're talking right now. We're talking about two guys that are not examples of the thing we're talking about. These are not two guys that when they were in their youth they listened to OGs and made it. These are guys that are actually supposed to be dead. You understand that didn't listen. These are guys who made it in spite of being the guys we spoke about. Like these guys were lucky. These are not guys that were wild and they listened to guys who've been through it and they stopped doing what they were doing and they made it past 30. These are guys who would be dead other than the fact that they were lucky enough not to be dead.
But one thing I also want to point out. I get it. But one thing I want to point out before Dr. Johnson, I know you had some time commitments and some other things that you had to do. I will not hold you accountable if you decide to leave, man. I know you probably might have been staying on out of courtesy, but if you got a jet, I won't.
Well, I'm staying on out of love, for everybody up here and for the subject. I did want to make a quick statement, but go ahead. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
You make your statement because
all right. What? But no, I was just with something we were talking. I was hearing earlier. We were saying. I think you quoted somebody in the comments, and I think one of the thoughts I had that came from that is, especially as older guys, because I'm hearing what you and Marcus are saying about being over 40 and Dr. Neal, and you're absolutely right. And that's a level of responsibility that many of my generation, we weren't necessarily trained to be prepared to deal with, but it's upon us. So the whole question of, not only leading by example the way these two men did, but even going a step further, something Farrakhan would do and actually, having sit downs, mentoring is really what that comes down to. If you raise the question of why bother, is it worth it? I have to argue it is. Even if you take YouTube, you know what I mean? I've listened to, Gigi, Dr. Neal, Marcus. I've listened to y'all shows, and there has often been something that y'all will say on a day I need to hear it. You know what I mean? And at a time I need to hear it. My spirit may be low. I may be, whatever. It comes across in a way that I may need at that moment. If it wasn't said, if you didn't bother, you know what I mean? What do I miss out on that? And how does that affect me? You know what I mean? So in terms of leading by example and then taking it a step further in mentoring, even if it's mentoring in the context of just initiating a sit down, I think all of that has importance. You know what I mean? Because we're becoming the elders. Once you get over 40, yes, it's not technically something that we should take lightly, because it's not a guarantee by any means, especially for Black men. But it's incredibly important that we actually take that extra step to put a word out there. Because I'm telling you, man, even just sitting at a bus stop listening to someone I never met before, sometimes they drop something on me I need to hear. And so I want to applaud these two men, but I also want to add, I hope we do, amongst ourselves as brothers, I hope we do make that extra step, because y'all have made it for me in ways you don't even know about.
Man, see.
I have a question.
Now respond. Now you can't respond to that, can you, Marcus? You can't say shit to that, can you, Marcus?
I said I appreciate it.
I have a
You
question.
could.
Oh boy, why I gotta be?
I have a
That guy?
question.
Why I gotta be
Hey,
the fat
gentlemen,
guy? Doc is
I
my
have a
man.
question.
You know he's my man.
Yeah, go ahead, brother. Go
I
ahead
have
and
a
ask your
question.
question, man.
Like, like for the older generation. Like, I'm in my 20s. I'm 23 now. When I hear older cats like you guys, I'm not saying that you old, but I'm just saying you're older than me. I'm pretty sure. But at the same
Man,
time,
we old, man. You just dissed us, motherfucker. You punk ass. No, I'm just fucking with you, man. No, that's
I'm
good,
saying
brother, man.
like I dig it. But I'm saying like for my generation, it's hard to look up to you cats because y'all haven't put anything in front of us to look up to, and then y'all wait to get. Now I'm not saying you. I'm just speaking in general. Like older dudes, they wait till they get in their 40s and 50s, then they want to drop game on us. But at the same time, we ain't trying to hear you no more because we was in our like growing up to 0 to 10, all the way to our teens. Now we in our 20s. Now you want to be a father to us. We like so we making up our own decision on how we live our life. Yeah, granted, majority of us we living reckless. We
Hey,
living
can I
young
answer
and
that?
dying
Can
young.
I answer,
I understand where
can
he's
I
coming
answer
from. I
that?
do.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead,
Yes, sir.
go.
Okay. Uh, here's what we're actually speaking to. We're speaking to a disconnect. Um, you know that saying that that bull saying, the older bull says, the younger bull wants to run down and get one, and then the older bull says, wait a minute, let's walk down and get them all, right? So that disconnect between excuse me, that disconnect between the older bull and the younger bull is there. This is what we're speaking to, that disconnect. So the purpose of this space is to bring back the connection. Hip hop is
Would
an
you
aspect.
would you would you agree like 82% of black homes are single parent homes and a lot
But
of
let me
male
let me let
child.
me but let me finish telling you though. You see, it's not, hip hop is only a part of it. What the bigger picture is that we understand that we're dealing with so many arms of these systems that put us in this position. Okay, you got to acknowledge this is some historic stuff. If you don't understand what's happening in through our history, to
Yeah,
what
but
put us in
no
this
disrespect
position.
to you, sir. No
Yes, sir.
disrespect to
Go
you,
ahead.
but how is Jeezy and Gucci Man squashing their beef historically?
See, listen, this is what I'm saying. Okay, from history, not just from the hip hop aspect, but from how things have happened to us over history. This is what I'm speaking to. See, when you look at what's happened, when you study things as has happened to you, to where you can build on to your present, then you get a better understanding of your direction when you move towards the future. See,
Right, but
there was
when you speak to
go ahead,
young
go ahead.
men, you also got to be you not to cut you off, but when you speaking to the younger generation, you have to understand y'all might call them black queens, but they are the downfall of the young black men because most of them are single parents, and you raising a young male child, he's growing up to think, talk like a female. He got his emotions are like a female because that's all he been around. Him, his mother, grandmother, his sisters, auntie. He been around nothing
Okay,
but
so let me
females.
tell you.
So
Okay, brother. So let me tell you. You're in this space, right? Because you're recognizing things that had happened in that part of the history. That is part of the history. You're recognizing the things that are happening. There's a reason why you're here, and there's a reason why many won't come here because they haven't been able to receive this kind of enlightenment. There's a reason why you're here asking these questions because you haven't had, and it may not be you specifically, but there's a lot of brothers out there who hasn't had this type of enlightenment because they're in the situation they're in.
So here's the
Either
thing.
they,
Here's the thing. You have a rapper, young guy, King Von, who got killed in Atlanta in the last couple of weeks. How old was he? He was a young guy. He's your generation.
26.
26 years old. Killed by another black man. That's why this is important. Okay? Nipsey Hussle. who is younger than all of us, killed by a black man. This happens over and over. Young black men kill each other every freaking day. This is why this is important.
And that's
And
why I was saying. That's
May I
why I
speak?
was.
I
It's important
understand. I
that,
hear that. But I'm saying though, they fatherless.
but it's not only that. It's not only that. Listen. It's not only because there has been choices that have been made to where that person, that young boy, is father.
Sir,
It's a there's things that have
sir, what
happened
I'm
that
saying.
we're
I hear,
subject to.
No,
That's
can
why
I?
I'm saying. This is why I'm saying that it's
no,
important.
sir. I hear what
You,
you're saying. But
Yeah,
majority
yes,
of
let the
sir.
youngin, let the youngin speak, man. Let the youngin
Yes, sir.
speak.
majority
I
of the
want to hear
Yes,
what
sir.
people.
this youngin is going through in his thought process. Youngin,
Yes, sir.
speak, man. Speak on it, youngin.
Yo,
Well, what I'm
Class
Chris,
what
no,
blocks.
I'm
Chris. I
saying.
want to hear Chris Light
Okay,
speak, man.
appreciate it, sir. But what I'm saying to you is
Yes,
this
sir.
right here. What I'm saying is this right here. Majority of the murders in America, black on black crime, majority of these people being murdered come from a fatherless home. I understand you trying to say it's more than that, and where people the young up and what they see and all that. But a lot of these cats, if you got a father in the crib, a dedicated father that love their children, he's at home. He's gonna make sure his son ain't out here acting like a knucklehead. That street life, all that good shit. He's not. He gonna make sure he prevent that from his child.
I
But
agree
when
with
you
him.
a
being
lot of
raised
us
by
came
a
from
single
that. A
mom
lot of us,
and
No,
the
those
but
of
two,
us
but
in our
it's
40s
listen.
came
Yeah,
from that.
hold on, man. Hold on.
once
Hold on. Go ahead, Chris. So this is what. Look, let me just say this. I
listen,
mean, classic.
if
Not.
you
What I don't want to happen is what I don't want to do is reduce all the pathology that black men are engaged in on the fact that they got absent fathers.
No.
Because that's what ends up happening a lot. Like, well, I want to say that before the conversation gets any further. Because I know a whole bunch of, I was going to say the N word, but I'm just going to keep it peaceful and keep it upscale right now. But I know a lot of guys, whole lot of them, who come from intact families, who on some scummy, straight up slimy, grimy shit. I mean, I'm talking about the grimiest shit I done ever seen, man.
But
Got both parents at the crib.
right, but
Got a
AG,
daddy
I'm
that
speaking
loved
of the
him. Got a
majority.
daddy that bought him
I'm
jackets,
speaking
clothes,
of I'm
shoes,
speaking of the
anything the
majority.
little guy
I
could
think
want.
yeah, G,
Hold
I
on,
think
man. Wait a minute, man. Let me say
Papa,
this. Let me say it. Yeah, fathers are important, but I think my guess is this is an educated guess. Okay, because first of all, and it ain't just, and it's an experiential guess as well. Okay, black men have a low value on black male life.
there's a
Period.
reason for
Because
this.
they don't put a value on their own fucking life.
there you go.
That
Because they don't think highly of
come from
themselves.
home.
Wait a minute, man. That it comes from home.
That
It
comes from
does come
home.
from home. But look,
That comes from
it only
home.
it, but it comes from society at large as well.
But
Your life
G,
has never been black males' lives have never been worth shit. I can see right now
Now I'm
in this
saying the
culture,
first person, the first sir,
classic,
the first
classic,
the first person,
classic, classic.
the first person
Will you
that ever
listen? Classic,
disrespected
man.
a black
Classic,
person came from the crib.
classic,
Yes,
classic.
sir.
Will you listen, man?
You
Have you
long
ever heard
winded,
of the
bro.
dial test? You ever seen the dial test?
Yes,
Have you
sir.
ever seen it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we talking about 2, 3 year olds,
No,
right?
sir.
Huh?
No, sir.
What you mean, no, sir? You never seen the dial test? Have you ever seen it?
No, you asked me if I seen something. I told you, no, sir.
Oh, okay. So
Explain it.
look, go look.
Explain
You
it.
can they take children who are black from the ages of 3 years old to the ages of 9 to 12 years of age, and they sit them in front of two dials, and they ask those children, which dial is the pretty dial? And they put black and white kids in front of these dials. Okay, the black children, in a preponderance of cases, will say that the dark child is the ugly child. They will say the dark child is the bad child. The dark
Right.
child is the disagreeable child. Okay, now we're talking about 3 years old on up to the ages of 9 years old, not just boy children or male children, but female children as well. Okay, so there's a problem that
Hey,
begins with our own
Are
value.
they basing that off of
hey,
genetics?
G, can I speak to Classic for a second, just for a second,
It's man,
and
look,
just for
all
a
I'm
second.
trying to I'm
Go ahead,
trying to finish my point, Marcus.
no problem.
And I understand you got
Go ahead.
points to make, and I understand that you
No, I
might
just
be
wanted
in
to.
agreement with Classic. But all I'm trying to say is, if you value your own life to begin with, if you have self-esteem to begin with, if you have prospects of flourishing and thriving for your own self, you tend to preserve that which you have access to. And you don't want to diminish it. You don't want to throw it all away. When you value yourself, and what I'm saying is it comes from inside of the home, but it also there's a superstructure that has been studied by scholars for decades that demonstrates that there are images being bombarded to black people incessantly, which creates internalized self-loathing. And these same guys who are quick to kill or shoot one another, and I have to say this, and it's gonna put some people in a bad way. Them the last motherfuckers that'll go kill a white boy to do the same shit, the same disrespect extended to them. They won't extend that same energy to a white motherfucker, but they'll give all that energy to another brother.
Agreed.
Implied genetic
Yeah, I
imprint.
agree with you. I agree with you. We
Yep.
that's generation.
I
But
think
yeah,
what
That's a
I just want to drop real quick. I'm gonna let you go
generational
ahead,
thing,
Mark.
sir.
But I just
hmm
want to say
That
something to
has
him.
nothing to do with the dial test, the skinny child and the light.
Cla- Classic. I want to say
I'm
one
just saying,
thing.
like, all that's we've been raised around.
I
Classic.
think you
That's
said,
it out there. Everything you speaking of that I'm
hey, you
catching
Borg
on your end,
classic.
sir, is you pretty much
Yeah.
saying
You
once you get
Borg
to a certain age
classic.
of understanding, you pretty much living your life.
But classic, I want to let you know with this. You got to understand this. What you're saying is true. You know they don't have the men in the household. My father wasn't in my household, but I am a specimen of a perfect dad. Because why? I was making myself be better than what I didn't have. You know, so you talking about there's no men in the household. It's up to those young men growing up to become better. You know, if they want to go live that thug life, that's the path that they chose. Everybody has a choice in life to make. You know, you can't blame it on your daddy not being there. You not getting those skates when you was little. You know, your daddy never took you to get ice cream.
Yep,
That's all
it
a
ain't that
reflection
simple,
of
bro.
you want to make
it is
excuses.
that simple.
Let me. All right, I've been. Hold on. I've been waiting to say this for a minute now. Let me just get this out, man. It'll probably be the last thing I say before I jump off of here. All right. So I don't know if Classic is still with us, but um, he's right. Okay. There's much more than to Daddy being there than what he didn't give you as a kid, and he didn't go throw frisbee for you. All this,
Hmm.
scarcity that we talking about. All of this, being raised by single moms and being raised by,
Hmm.
to have all these, emotional responses to things and things like that. A lot of it, and like Gigi said, just because you got an intact home, don't mean you can't be dirty. But gee, it's like the conversation me and you had about mitigating, certain things. All right, a lot of this stuff, the percentages that we are dealing with, would be mitigated under the right structural, influences and things like that. So I think the kid is right. Not only that, but we're talking about you know, man, I done lost my train of thought. We talking about, we talk about these guys that are going out and doing this and doing that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, um, a lot of this stuff is poverty based, and we know this already. A lot of it is poverty based, and what these guys are getting, where these guys are getting their advice from is from older guys who are not necessarily successful or even alive because they're doing the things that they're telling the younger dudes to do. They're alive in spite of, right?
Wait a minute. Wait a
Now,
minute.
so no,
He said
listen.
he
Let
wasn't
me
listening to it.
hold on. I waited
Let
to
him
talk.
finish.
I'm gonna finish. Check this
Okay.
out. A lot of the older guys who are talking to these younger guys, all right, aren't necessarily even the best examples to be giving out advice to younger guys. Just because you live to make 40 doesn't mean you can start schooling people. Just cause you made it to 40, that's not an achievement. You understand what I'm saying? Like, yo, like if you're gonna give me advice, why are you the example for me to follow other than the fact that you breathing and you know, and drinking water, and you know, it's deeper than that, man. You know what I'm saying? It's deeper than that. Of course, I'm not saying that older guys don't have good advice to give, like, yo, little man, don't go out there and do this and do that. But not only that, but what are we
Ah,
what alternatives are we giving these guys to rock with? If we're saying, yo, don't go about getting your money this way, don't do this, don't do that. Okay, so what would you rather me do other than what I'm doing? Where can you steer me to other than just telling me the righteous path and don't do it because it's not the thing to do? So
There you
what
go.
should I
Hey
do
Marcus,
as
let me just
opposed
say
to
this. Let me just say this in
what I'm
response to
doing?
that.
You understand what I'm saying?
Let me just
So
say this in
it's
response to that.
hold on,
Hey
Kachi.
Marcus, you
I
say
know
you
he
made
was.
a point.
I'll be
Marcus, you made a point.
He's keep making the point.
I
You know.
got
You know what?
I got
You know
one more
what?
Marcus, hold
sentence
on,
before
wait
I'm
a
done.
minute. It's the Green fucking Gorilla Show.
All right,
You know.
I'm
I
done.
want to.
It's the Green Gorilla channel, god
May
damn
I
it.
speak?
I just want
Hold
to say.
on.
Okay.
I'm,
All
Let,
right.
I'm nah.
Because I'm 61, I lived through this shit, man. From the very beginning of this bullshit, man. From the very beginning, okay. You have 40 fucking years of seeing the same goddamn example over and over and over again. From you have songs, rap songs going all the way back to the mid '80s. You got documentaries, you got all kind of shit, man. Got examples of 3 generations. If you want to go out there and do the same stupid shit that we did in the fucking '80s when we didn't know no goddamn better, go for it. Just don't come crying when you get locked up or you get killed, something like that. Stop crying over these people. If that's the way you decide to do it, and you know better. It's like chicks. Let's just like chicks go out and become single mothers. When you know better, why should I cry over you? I'm 60. We didn't know this shit when this shit started in the 1980s. It was new. Okay, we didn't know all the shit that the government was pushing the shit into our neighborhoods. We had no clue where this shit came from. All of a sudden, we just looked up, and one day a plague just descended upon the black community. We had no clue where this shit come on, and then the guns started coming in. We had no clue. Okay, we went through the shit because we didn't know. Y'all, the younger guys, y'all know. Whether an old man says something to you or not, you already know better. So stop saying that my daddy wasn't home. I was raised by my mom. You already know better.
Right.
Stop with that shit.
So
Go ahead.
I wanted to say the same shit.
Yeah, you got
Either you can learn by a motherfucker who went through some shit. Like this is what the 48 laws of power, the 50 rules of power and all this shit is. It's like, okay, you can either learn from another motherfucker's mistakes, or you gotta make every mistake over again, just like the dumb motherfucker did who ended up getting ensnared by the trap. Now, the human beings who are rational and who have the capacity to utilize reason in order to problem solve can say, okay, look, we can take collective knowledge and utilize it in order to improve or, to ameliorate problems, as opposed to every stupid motherfucking individual going out there and trudging and trying to figure it out by himself. So right now we got enough cultural and collective knowledge to say, look, young man, I'm not your daddy. I can't really tell you shit. But what I can tell you is you're not unique. You're not. You might get lucky because I'm going to tell you this. You're lucky if you Jeezy and Gucci. You're lucky. There are anomalies. But at least there are anomalies who are able to overcome a problem, and they're giving you some insight and some information on how to avoid the pitfalls and the traps. They just did something significant. Maybe you need to pattern your behavior after theirs. Not the ignorant shit that they did, but the shit that they're doing now as older men who know more, who know better. Now, either you can decide to figure, like, you're a genius now. Maybe you got it all fucking figured out right now, right? They went through trauma. They went through terrible experiences to get to where they are. You don't have to do that, young man. But, you know every goddamn thing. So go ahead and do it then. At
Hey,
some point, at some point, you got to make the decision to either, because we can't change the circumstances. This is where, like, let's just get real. We can't make single parent homes go away overnight. That shit ain't gonna happen. This is the situation we dealing with. So we can't go into the emergency room because we in the emergency room right now. Okay, we in the triage. We can't say this motherfucker got shot. Oh, he shouldn't have got shot. If he wasn't in the wrong place right now, that motherfucker wouldn't have got shot. It wouldn't have happened. Oh, so what? We in the motherfucking triage. We got a bullet wound. We got to get this motherfucker stitched up. So what we gonna do now? Can't talk about what could be, what should be, what the perfect ideal conditions are. What we gonna do now? Because that's what organisms do in order to survive, or communities.
let me say this, man, because to the young brother who's listening, and everything. I'm 47 years old. I did not want to be like my uncles.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to be my mother's brothers. I was born in 1973. My mother was born in 1942. She was much younger than her brother. She had 6 brothers and 4 sisters, okay? And the vast majority of her brothers languished. They died. They went to prison. They died in poverty. I saw them and I said to myself, I don't want to be like those black men. And I did everything in my power, and I wasn't perfect, and I made mistakes, and I fucked up. I fucked up big time. But I said, you know what? I'm not going to be like them. I'm not going to die in prison. I tried my best not to die of fucking AIDS. I'm still trying not to die of fucking AIDS right now. Okay? You make a choice about how you want to live your life, regardless of how you came up, whether your father was around, whether you were raised by your grandmother or your grandmother, or raised by aunt, or raised by some foster home. You can make a decision about how you want to live. That's the bottom line.
May I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, T.
I really want to hop back in, but Classic and Gold were having their back and forth and kind of go back to the title of the show, but I messed up and got kicked myself off the panel. But I'm 27 years old. I'm born from 1993. So I get where Class was coming from, but I completely understand where Gold was coming from. I think to answer the question, Jeezy and Gucci settling their differences, they should be praised, and it's a moment in history for the people who went through that era. And I think that's the big problem or the difference, that Gold, or the disconnect between Classic and Gold. Because speaking of what Gigi was saying earlier, and give me a second, I'm a little bit nervous, y'all. I don't know if y'all can hear me good or not,
Yeah, it's cool, brother.
but
Don't be nervous, man. You just amongst brothers, man.
appreciate it. But speaking of what Gigi was saying earlier when he got out, how Jeezy was just blaring everywhere. The mediums for music and everything was different then. In terms of the radio, streaming and all that wasn't anywhere as big. So the only way for people in Classic's generation to really understand it the same way in terms of the how monumental it would be. And I wanted to say this when he was on the thing, but it'd be like if Lil Uzi Vert and NBA YoungBoy, somebody like them, if they had a deadly beef and they settled it. That's the only way people of this generation would be able to relate. Because even my brother, I got 8 years on him. He's 19. The versus battle for him was more entertainment than it was for people in my age. I thought that was cool. It was monumental to me, especially on Gucci's end, to see him put that down. You try to kill me, I ain't settling that, man. So I get it though. And
Damn
last thing
thing.
I'm gonna say, and I'll let go of it. I don't know if any of y'all watched Joe Budden's podcast,
That's
but he
fucked.
called up 21 Savage's manager and he said, hey, we're just some dudes from New York talking, but what's it like in Atlanta? Like, did this have any impact? And his manager said, 21 Savage's manager said, hell yeah, it had an impact. In terms of the versus thing, Jeezy might have won because he's more worldwide. But in terms of some street shit, for Gucci to put that down, hell yeah, there are definitely some dope
What's
boys or
wrong with the
people who
damn
had
shit?
beefs, dope boys or people who had beefs that called up and was like, yo, man, this shit petty. So I do think it had a an effect, but I definitely think there's a disconnect just due to the different eras. Things weren't the same and people don't grow up. We're not in as much of a box, I think. But that's all I had to say. I'm done.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you coming in and speaking your piece, and I'm sorry it took so long for you to be able to get in.
Nah, that's all good.
Everybody think it's different, but unfortunately, man, coming from all these three generations, man, unfortunately, it is the same. I keep seeing the same shit. I say y'all still doing the same shit, man. It just shake my head. It
You
don't
know,
change. The
yeah,
clothes ain't really changed that much, man. In like 3 decades, clothes are pretty much the same as they were 3 decades. I've been expecting a change and a changeover. Y'all still doing the same stuff, wearing the same clothes, basically the same beats, man. Ain't nothing really changed. You guys, a little variation here or there. That's about it.
Hey, I
It's
wanted
just
to
wondering
ask
when it's gonna
Marcus.
change.
and that's
I
an old.
wanted
This is
to
an
ask
OG. This is a man 60 years old plus speaking. You know what I'm saying? So
Marcus.
he's been because look, I'm in that era. I'm a 70s baby, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
unique in that I saw the transition from one
Mm-hmm.
era to another. I saw it. Okay, and I'm pretty sure BGS saw it too.
I,
I saw
my,
music
my,
go from. Go ahead.
my my best friend was teaching people in 1981 how to cook up rocks. That's how far back I go.
Well, hey, that's crazy, man. But
Yeah,
you
I
know,
lived under
before
a trap
before that
house.
before they started doing it. Well, we didn't even call them trap houses. Remember, there's the song called Bataram. Oh yeah,
right?
you
Yeah,
look it
yeah,
up. Okay,
Tiger
yeah.
tape.
when they were pulling the
Yes,
security
sir.
doors off
Yes, sir.
of houses and
Yes,
shit.
sir.
Yeah, that's me. When Easy, when you saw straight out of Compton, Easy E jumping fences and running
Yeah,
over roofs. Okay, yeah, that's us. Okay.
I'm 51, so I'm not too far from you.
Yeah,
So
you
So
know,
I
and
do
look,
know that.
I know everything. You know, look, I know how
yeah,
to. Well,
yeah,
I know how
yeah.
to.
Yeah,
Back in the day,
Yeah, Rick Ross grew up like we grew up. He's like a year younger than me. We grew up like a half a mile from each other. Okay,
man.
So if I
Look,
could ask you,
I'm not gonna
where
BGS,
you
even
are.
lie to you. I used to love selling crack cocaine.
It's easy.
I mean, you
It's
know,
easy.
I used to
It's easy.
I had a song because I used to be a rapper. I said I perfected rapping crack and saran wrap. Whether
Yeah,
it's a good or bad batch,
yeah.
watch me get that, flip that, big fat money stack.
It's easy. It's easy to do because it sells
It
it
sells
sells like
itself.
crack. It sells itself. But then that's the problem. I mean, the thing
You
is
know,
just it's a downside. If you get out the game with your bird, you're fine. But a lot of times I even said in my ramble. A lot of times. A chick get with you, man. She talk you into making this money. Your mama talk you into making this money. You get out there, man. You make yourself a few stacks, and you go to prison, you come out, man, them bitches and spent all that money, man. You back on the street with nothing,
Yep,
with a record.
I done
yep.
seen it happen a
And you
hundred
may be
times.
going back to it. You may be going back to it because you don't
Yeah.
see no way out.
If you go back to it, you ain't coming out, man. You know
Well,
the next
you
time
know
you
what
go
I'm
in,
saying.
you
You
ain't
know
coming
what I'm
out.
saying. You
You
know
ain't coming
exactly
out.
what I'm
Yeah, when they
saying.
hit you with them
Don't
second,
see no other way
Yeah,
to get money, because
yeah,
nobody was hiring them.
yeah,
The only way they seen was, oh well, let me do it on the low. I can do it better. I went in and I learned a better way how to do it. Let me go back out and try it again.
yeah. And
Because
that's what I'm
that's what.
saying. And
Yeah,
that's the whole thing about the generations. Everybody, what the Blade says. There's always some nigga trying to skate uphill. Ice skate uphill. Niggas been
yeah.
trying to ice skate uphill for 30 years, man.
With WD-40 on the skates.
The WE-40 on the skates, man. I'm just, I'm saying it's just, I'm just shaking my head. So brother said, well, it's because I was raised in, raised wherever, raised without a father or
Without
whatever, all that kind of man. You know what, dude? You ever since you was 6, 7 years old, man, you've seen how this life is, man, and you chose it. So don't
And
come
you can
crying about
Google.
your children
He
that
can
try.
Google it now. Shoot, he got all the internet right now.
Man,
You know what I'm saying? He got
You
everything.
you learn the lyrics to the game, man, before you even get 5 years old. You know what the game is, man.
I wanted to ask Marcus, what is he going to, if he had any nephew, any brothers, or anything like that? What will he tell them? Will he say the same thing to them? That's what I was curious about.
Yeah, he dipped off. So
Oh,
we
okay.
got some people here who haven't said anything. Sandal, you want to say something? Eon Grays, you want to say something?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Eon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, man, I'm good to be on with you, brothers. I mean, I hear what you're saying about the fatherless situation being the premise for why our men are not being developed. That's what the whole gist of it is, right? And then moving into whether or not criminal behavior is a factor in taking away from manhood. But I mean, but we're saying, in a sense, is that if you're involved in criminal behavior, you can't be a man. But that's not necessarily historically true. You know what I mean? Because the white folks, what I'm saying, that's all they do is criminal behavior. So the criminal aspect of our society is not the problem. You know what I'm saying? It's not whether or not you sold drugs or not. Because them white folks, they idolize their criminals and shit. Excuse my language, but so that's not really the problem. I mean, so we got to even just remove the fact that selling drugs is really the problem in our community, because it really wasn't. It's always been poverty, and it's always been systematic racism. How we made our money was how we made our money. Be it illegal or criminal.
And
Now,
you know what?
now,
Look,
You said
well,
criminality
let me
wasn't the
just say this.
problem?
Hold
go
on.
ahead.
Let me just say. I want to say something about that, Ian.
Mhm.
And what Ian is saying may seem like nonsense to some people, but look, here's the reality: white people use more dope than black people. They sell
Mm-hmm.
more dope than white and black people.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fact.
All of them.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's dope in Wall Street. There's dope at every major university on every campus in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's dope in every suburbs. I went to school with white boys. I know. Look, I lived in the ghetto, but I went to school with white boys when I went to high school.
Mm-hmm. Find out more drugs and what
I
white
saw more dope there
drugs.
than
Yep.
I ever saw in the
Yep.
hood.
Yep.
Ever.
Yes.
So we don't want to. So yes, there is this misrepresentation of what the impact of drugs is on black folks in the black community. But however, what is impactful is the way that it's criminalized and
Mm-hmm.
the way that our lives are subject to either death or social death because of it.
Mhm.
Okay, and also look, this is just historical fact. Okay, you make something illegal and it's in high demand, people are going to be in a rush to sell it because the profit margin on it is going to be high.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line. So that's the reason why, you got guys competing with one another and hurting each other in these kind of environments. You got, and Ron O'Neill said this earlier, man. You got deprivation, then you got competition. Also couple that with internalized self, like loathing, and you got a powder keg situation, man. And I don't want to go too far because we
Let, let,
almost at the
let,
2:30
let,
mark. So we're
let
gonna cut
me
this off
let,
at 2:30.
let me ask Ian a question about what he just said.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question. So is death, destruction, and all the stuff that's going on in the neighborhood the cost of doing business?
The death and destruction.
Yeah.
I think the death and destruction would happen. Was a. I think the death and destruction was going to happen regardless of whether or
Nope.
not we had crack
Nope.
or not.
Nope.
That's the
It's
cost
not
of
true.
business.
That's not true.
That's the cost
I
of
can tell you
business.
that's not true. You can look at your charts and know that's not true. But is that? What I'm saying is, said I don't, because you look down in Mexico, what the drug war is doing down there in freaking Mexico, man. Basically that's where the highest 5 cities in the world as far as murders are. All right. It didn't
Mm.
happen in Mexico before the drugs. The drugs are a direct cause. Drugs and drug competition are direct cause of what you see. Okay. And that's how come they push that shit through the black community, because they don't want that the same kind of bullshit going in the white community. Okay.
I mean,
It is
and I,
it
and, my,
it
and
it's it is a direct cause, man. It's been a direct cause
but
since
I mean, no, I mean, I get what you're saying. What I'm saying
but,
is,
so I'm
understandably,
asking you if
let me
hold
clarify.
on a second, So I'm
Let me
asking you
clarify.
hold on,
Yeah,
okay,
let me clarify that.
okay, clarify then, sir.
So I mean, so I'm here in Atlanta, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of these Negroes out here ain't making no money selling this shit. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? They
Okay.
ain't making no money. They They, you know what I'm saying? You got folks killing, you know what I'm saying, and dying on a regular basis. Shootouts happening. Niggas is shooting each other over their girlfriends and shit. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
they shooting each other over stupid shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's not even necessarily just because they selling drugs don't mean they killing each other over the drugs itself. They don't even know
Ian,
the value
Ian,
of the
Ian,
drug.
Ian,
They
Ian.
don't even know the value
It's not
because
even
they
rockets.
ain't making no money.
It's not rocket science, man. Like when I say the highest 5 cities in the world for murders is in Mexico because of the drug cartels and the drug trade. I know what I'm talking about. It happened in L.A. in the '80s, man. I
But
saw
we
it.
don't have cartels though. That's the thing.
The cartels are always with you, man. You just don't see them.
I'm saying black folks, we
I,
do
I,
not have cartels.
but you never answer my question. Is
Uh-huh.
this death and destruction and dysfunction worth the cost of doing business? Because you said that's how black people have to get money. Are we willing to accept these people as losses?
Who's in particular?
Now I'm talking about black people. Who's in particular?
Well, that, like I said, okay. So now I got to go back to the study. There's a man who
I,
did a study, right?
can you answer the question before you give
He
me the
said
explanation?
he said 10. He said basically he said 10% of folks that was using drugs were actually strung out and not able to go about their normal lives. Just like you have a functional alcoholic, the
Mm-hmm.
majority of people who were using drugs were able to function.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a demand, but it wasn't. But only 10% would do anything for the money. And so what I'm saying is, folks were killing each other
Mm-hmm.
already because there was a setup of poverty and self-hate that was going on
They,
in our community. And what I'm saying is,
they were, but I'm saying,
that's a
that's
factor.
not. But that's Ian. That's not true.
Uh,
That's not true. I gave you the example. That's not true. I saw what happened before and what happened after. That's not true.
So let
People
me put
people
it
in
this way.
poverty before, and when the guns and the drugs and the competition for this money came through, that's when the violence started.
So
That's when it started in Mexico. Mexico wasn't this violent
so
before.
let me put it in perspective, okay?
mm,
So I think there's elements of truth in what both of y'all are saying,
mm,
but the problem is the illegality of the drugs. See,
right.
anytime you got an illicit market, the only way that the market can be governed is through force and fraud. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Those are the only virtues that exist within illicit markets. That's it. I mean, what happened when alcohol was prohibited and there was a demand for it? You have violence related to it. The alcohol itself doesn't cause as much violence as does the illicitness of the alcohol itself and
Mm-hmm.
people's trying to maintain and control governance over the illicit market. Because you can't have the government regulated. You can't, somebody steals it from you, you can't get it back through,
Exactly.
calling the police. Hey, somebody took my dope. You can't do that. So you got to go handle it yourself. So so men, but at the same time, I understand what Ian is saying as well. Look, here's the deal. Black people got a lot more going on though than the dope game, but it's got that going on too. But black men, especially young black men, they want to prove their manhood so badly sometimes, and it's difficult for people to let beefs go, man. I mean, it's hard for anybody, man, woman, or child, to let a beef go, especially if the person is chiding you about it and is ready to press you about it. Bottom line. I don't know if I would be able to forgive a man after he sent somebody to kill me either. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, and I don't know how many other people's lives it will impact. I don't know. But what I will say is, and this is what I say, because look, I told you, this is a shameless plug again. Okay? Just so y'all know. I'm gonna share the screen. Let me share my screen. Chrome tab. I want to
Hey,
go to I want to
Gigi, you got some clicking or something going on. I don't know what that is.
that's probably some background noise for somebody else's stream. It's not me. But
Okay. Oh, okay.
there's
Okay.
nothing that's not nothing I can control. I don't know if y'all can see this screen. It's probably small, so I'm gonna try to make it a little bit bigger. Anyway, by the way, I got a new website. It's called the Green Gorilla Channel. So yeah, go check the greengorillachannel.com out. I got all my posts and shit from Facebook on there, and yeah, there's that. But so anyway, I wrote this blog post on Jeezy and Gucci Mane, and I said they should be praised for burying their beef. But here's the deal, man. I say instead of allocating more resources to police departments and prison facilities, budgets need to be made available for community controlled homicide prevention centers that conduct research and provide psychological services for black males who are at risk of finding themselves in blood feuds with one another. We don't know how to handle this shit. These are public health problems.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be able to deal with these public health problems. Now, I say, fortunately, without the aid of resources, Jeezy and Gucci Mane were able to settle their differences and move the culture of hip hop and the circumstances of black males forward through their example. For this, they should be praised. It's not easy to forgive and forget after one's dignity has been violated and the lines of violence have been crossed. But it can be done. It can. And I say, hopefully, more black males will follow their lead and let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, there will be more tragic losses like those of Pop Smoke, King Von, MO3. But we don't know what they were beefing about, and we don't know the extent to which any of their deaths were surrounded by, adversarial arguments or anything like that. I don't think Pop Smoke's death was related to that. I think he was just robbed, by people casing where he was out. But there are socio-economic causes to the violence we see, and there's also psychological or psychosocial causes to the kind of violence we see in the black community amongst black men. We need help. We need resources to be thrown at our problems, and we need to move beyond just sitting here talking to each other and browbeating each other, right? We need a whole think tank of people who are above my pay grade to help with this issue. Well, I won't say above my pay grade, but I'll say people who are among my peers and people who are community oriented, black men, to come in and say, how can we establish centers where black men are at risk of killing each other, how they can come and settle their difference out through mediation, through reconciliation. Because 50% of the time, these guys know each other that are shooting and killing each other, man. 50%, at least half of the time. Okay? So we need to find ways to settle conflict without resorting to murder.
Mm-hmm.
We can find a way to do that. But we don't even know how to do it in the context of our intimate relationships. We don't know how to do it in the context of our business relationships, even if it is illicit activity. We don't know how to do it. And we think so lowly of ourselves, and we have so little value attached to our own lives as black men that we continue to fall into the same traps again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
We need to find a way past it, man. And I'm glad that Gucci Mane and Jeezy were able to settle whatever differences they had. It may have no impact on other men's lives, but hopefully it won't be another Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah, they grew up. That's really all it comes down to. They grew up.
And we want, but here's the deal though, BGS, and this is one thing. This is one thing we got to find a way to do.
Mm-hmm.
We got to help young black men grow up quicker. We got to help them do that. Now I know that at the age of 21 to 25, they're still, the prefrontal cortex is still not fully formed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a scientific fact. Okay, but we got to find a way to get these young men to grow the fuck up quicker. We have to.
Well,
Hey,
basically, yeah, but Monahan. I was actually listening to. In fact, I put it up because I actually taped it. That the Brookings Institute is actually doing the same thing. And one brother, he was actually mimicking the same thing that Monahan said. Almost 60 years ago. Man, they know how, man. You need to get these boys into a male-dominated space instead and get them away from these bitches. Really, that's all it is. But the bitches won't let y'all go because they like you where you are. So that's the bottom line. We need Gigi, we need Dr. Neil, we need Dr. Tiasan, man, to have making a curriculum for all black boys schools, man, that she get these boys out of this female dominated thinking that they're doing. That's why they're killing each other. They're acting like bitches. That's what women do. be emotional over goddamn beef. Okay, that's what they do. But we need to get them out of that. But the thing is that we have so many people in the United States that want black men to stay in that box where they are, and that's the issue.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue. And then they pump the drugs and the guns and it start, it give you reason to beef, and that's what happens. That's what perpetuates. But it's nothing like what it used to be. Trust and believe. This what y'all dealing with now is nothing compared to what the 80s and early 90s was. I mean, that was literally the wild West.
ABGS.
Yes, it was.
ABGS.
Look, so we move into the 2 hour and 30-minute mark. Does anybody want to make some closing remarks? I know Ron O'Neal seems like he took a vacation. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Hey, BGS, man, I'm glad you made it to 60, man. I'm appreciative of you, brother.
Yeah, you got a lot of homies that didn't, man, and a lot of homies that did a lot of time, man.
You here to tell us something, and I'm in the same boat. I have partners that went to jail and still in jail, and I got relatives who still got bullet fragments in their head and out the way, so I just want to make it clear that I'm glad that you here and I'm here. We can tell these young folks, hey, look, this is how it goes. I mean, we ain't just telling you, hey, look, don't smoke that. We telling you why you shouldn't smoke that or why you shouldn't do this. This is the reason this is happening to you. This is the reason you can make better. You did one broadcast where you was said that you can, being that you was speaking to somebody, but you have the choices now. We tell you, then now you have the choice. It's on you to make the decision. You can't say that you didn't know.
But one thing though I do want to do though, like a lot of times we place the onus on the individual, but we live in a community, man. Like these white people, man, they're not being overtly oppressive as they used to be, but they've created the conditions in which they can be oppressive to us and make it look like it's justice. That's why I think that it's important to what Ian said. But also at the same time, I understand what's important that BGS is saying. Look, we got to learn from our past mistakes. Right. And we need to have a means by which to put boys in environments where they can learn how to deal with the kind of circumstances that they're going to be thrust in when they mature. And it can't happen in single parent families. It's just not going to happen as far as it needs to, the extent to which it needs to. It just won't happen.
You got to find a way around it. Basically, single family parents is not going away anytime soon unless basically black women have a come to Jesus moment, which I don't see. So we got to find a way to actually kind of limit the damage, and basically the all male space can limit some of this damage, and it's been proven that it can. It's not that it hasn't been proven that it can. Is that who does not want this to happen? Well, and we already know who doesn't want it to happen.
So the idea is if males have spaces that are unique to themselves, then those spaces are innately oppressive. We're saying that all we have to do is flip the switch on this shit and say, look, if men aren't allowed to have male-only spaces, it's going to result, for one, in more damage to you. This has to be the case has to be made, and we have to illustrate interest convergence. You are creating.
Hold on.
You are creating the very conditions that you say you don't want. You're creating the toxic masculinity you say you don't want to see. This is why I did this show the other day about toxic masculinity not being a phrase that was coined by feminists. It wasn't. It was a phrase that was coined by men who created male-only spaces in order to be able to connect with one another and to mitigate what they perceive to be an encroachment on all areas of male life, which does lead to dysfunction in men. It does, okay? So you start to see all of these men failing, where all of these women are prospering. It's by design. It may not have started off by design, but at the same time, there's no design to stop it, right? There's no design to continue to help males because the preponderance of the inertia is going on the side of women somehow still being oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that narrative has to change.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have functioning black men, you don't have functioning black communities. You
Mm-hmm.
can't have a part of a. That's like taking an organism. That's why I say, even though we don't like it, because we want to say, okay, we want to save ourselves, and I get that, right? But here's the deal. Everybody's known this since time immemorial. Men and women are symbiotically related. We can't even produce the species and keep it going without interconnection at some point, some level. It has to happen for us to exist. Okay? Now, you got these big governments, they've come along and they've substituted familial arrangements because those arrangements have been increasingly perceived by certain segments of the population as inherently oppressive. But here's the deal. There's never been a successful civilization that hasn't had a way to continuously have it such that men and women are able to cooperate. You don't have a successful society if the men and women can't cooperate. We are at the point at which this damn society is going to unravel at its fucking seams.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And unless we can find a way to restore the balance, we're going to continue to be in psychic, social, and familial dis-ease. It's going to continue to happen. So it's not just women functioning. It's not just men functioning. It's men being able to function the way they do. It's women being able to function the way they do. And then it's time for us to find a way to get back to each other in ways that are respectful. Because right now it's all fucked up. It is fucked up out here, man.
Even white women are looking to make black men housewives. Ain't that a bitch?
And that's crazy, man. Like, look, you can't. There's a natural response to a man continuously being disrespected by either other men or women. It doesn't matter who. Right now, what you have is a situation in which most men are capitulating to the circumstances that they find themselves in. When men stop giving a fuck on a whole scale level, man, it's not going to be good for women at all. It's just not going to be good. So pick your poison. I say women. My viewpoint is women should start saying, look, we got to let these men have their own place, their own space, so that they can bond and congeal with one another and find a way to work out their problems with one another.
Yes, all I have to say is that I have to co-sign with what BGS has said and everything. We have to continue to push back against these forces that perpetuate the status quo in terms of black men being at the bottom, black men being perceived as what they are. I think that it is just the natural order of things that men, not simply as men, but as organisms, as human organisms, they rebel, they protest, they dissent against these dominating forces. When you look at the history, when you look at histories of subjugation, there is something about the human being that protests, that rebels against subjugation. Okay, regardless of how it is set up, how it is justified, or what have you. It's like even when you look at prisons, when you look at what happens within prisons, and when prisoners revolt against the regimes that over penalize them, there is something within the human being that protests against that. And what we have to do as men, black men in particular, is to continue to push that. I mean, there's no way around that. It's just a natural condition of our situation as men, and black men in particular. We just have to take the risk and do what we have to do to assert our agency. I keep just talking about it: black male independence, black male agency, BMI, BMA,
That's
in
right.
the face of all of these forces. That's the bottom line.
Right. Look, brother, I'm there with you. Like I've known for quite a bit of time that the circumstances black men find themselves in is one in which, you know, it, it's actually criminal if you think about it. And black men just have to start saying no. Like fuck your feelings. We're gonna set up spaces for ourselves. We're gonna handle our own problems. We're gonna exercise agency, and it ain't shit that you can do about it. If you don't like it, fuck you. Kick rocks. We don't need your permission to speak. We don't need your permission to make moves. And the only other piece that I hate that we didn't have time to get to was the display of this woman, man, Abrams, prior to the whole event. And it did piss me off when I saw it. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not the time for you to make a fucking shameless plug about a political party, man.
My God.
This is not the time for you to ask Negroes to go out and vote. This is some real men shit. This has nothing to do with what the fuck is going on between these two men or other men involved in similar circumstances. Going to vote is not going to have any impact over anything that's happening in black males' lives because you've already written us out of the political process. So why the fuck are you there?
It was an insult.
Yeah, it was an insult, man.
Well, I'm gonna say. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, man.
I'm going to say, it is important. I maintain that it is important that we have these spaces. On my channel, I start with business, and the business is prayer first, and then I go into the support and subscribe, right? And I maintain that it is not only about me. It is about the people. It is about the black man and his family. It is about the direction of the black man. And I make it a point to ask people to support and subscribe. I like you, Gigi. You run down a list of people who has supported you, right? And I took that cue too. I took that lane too. And I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say names. I'm gonna say, hey, support and subscribe to so and so, because it is important that we move towards a direction of, the betterment of the black man and his family. It's important. We've always have been the epitome of what justice is. There's a reason why people go against it. They don't want they don't want the essence of what justice really is, you see, and therefore, we're subject to all the rigmarole of everybody doing stuff and subjecting us to everything and blaming us for everything, and we're the ones that had the least power, but yet we're the ones that are the blame for everything. You see, so we need to have these spaces to express our frustrations, our healing, our agency. We need this space, and that's why I make it a point to, hey, I'm part of your subscription base, because I dig where you're going. You're speaking the same thing I'm speaking to. I always say, subscribe, support and subscribe to Green Gorilla. Support and subscribe to Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. Support and subscribe to Dr. Ronald Neal. I run it down because
thank you, brother.
This is important to the direction of the black man. This is important. I mean, I work just like everybody else, right? And I put in them hours, and I get my little $5-10. I put it towards an investment. You, Green Gorilla, are an investment. You see what I'm saying?
I appreciate that, bro.
You are that small stock where people they look over that stock, but you are that Amazon trillion stock. You understand? So I'm investing in that. You see, I may not yield anything this year, even though I am yielding, but I may not yield anything in this lifetime, but the people after me will yield it. That's the thing about it, man. The internet is undefeated, baby. You know what I'm saying? You know, they can find this information. You got information. Dr. Ron O'Neill got information. Dr. Tia Johnson got some information. BGS Itmore got some information. You know, we all got information, baby. You know, and that's what I'm about, man. You know, I put my money towards that stock because that stock is $1 trillion stock, and people are looking by it. You know, or they looking to find a way to take advantage of it. That's why they invade these spaces.
Yes, sir.
That's
but
why
you know what? They ain't gonna be able to invade this space because we already decided, man. It's a done deal with the invasion, man. Like this, this is a movement that can't be co-opted.
But I'm gonna tell you, GG, man. Look, you got people who will put on that mask, right? And they will come in, they will come in, strong on you. Next thing you know, they done took your information, flipped it, and then they're putting you in the category of you're the negative. You know, you the one that's tearing the neighborhood down. You're not creating nothing. You see, we know this happens. This is historically been proven. This is why we have to maintain that we are our own agency, and we have to maintain the security measures to do that. You know, and we do that by making sure we're up to speed about what we're talking about.
Right.
You know?
I'm like, look, I think that I'm not gonna say, because like Man Friday say he's seen it in the manosphere before, where brothers turn on each other and some people out here faking the funk and whatnot. Man, the shit that I've been through, man, like I ain't faking the funk with this. You know what I'm saying? So there's no co-optation with me. You might be able to stop my channel or something like that, or you might have some haters or something, somebody saying something. But at the end of the day, man, we all we got. If we don't look out for each other, who will? You'll never have 100% agreement amongst anybody, anywhere, in any organization, in any space. But that shouldn't be a means by which to, knock what's going on in the space. It just means, you got some disagreement. You got people with different viewpoints. You got different people with different ideologies. It just is what it is. You'll never ever reach 100% consensus on any matter or subject whatsoever. It's not meant to or designed, like the world is not designed that way. But if you have enough agreement about a core set of ideals or principles, then maybe you can reach some sort of cooperate. Well, not consensus, but you can at least agree to disagree on some points, and then those you agree on, you work towards that. So
you move forward.
And the thing about it is that we are. I mean, come on, man. The internet is worldwide. What we're doing right now is global. Brothers from the UK listen to us. People from Africa are listening in. People from the Caribbean are listening in. People from all over the world are listening to us. Okay? So we're not limited to this thing called the American Black Manosphere. We respect it. We have a space here and all that kind of stuff. We are not limited by it. The message transcends all the limited trivial beef that go on within this space. Okay, all the self-hatred. There's a lot of self-hatred that happens in the manosphere. There's a lot of beef, petty one-upmanship that happens here. But at the end of the day, our message, our talking points are global. Global. They affect the entire world. So we don't care about the petty stuff that happens here in the United States and those parts of the manosphere who are just limited, narrow, provincial, and who are stuck in their zip codes. Okay.
Yeah, but I want to push back on you though.
But look, let me just say this though. But see, we don't have time to get into a whole bunch. Like I want to have that conversation, but I think that needs to be a separate show. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
like if we're gonna start talking about like the beefs and the internecine struggles going on within the context of the manosphere, we can have that conversation. But it falls outside of the scope of the topic that we came here for, which is actually reconciliation amongst black men who are engaged in deadly beefs. So I appreciate all of y'all for coming out, man. because that conversation you about to get into, it would require a long, it would require a lot more than we can give justice to at this time.
Yes,
So,
sir. Yes, sir.
all I want to do is just thank y'all each for coming out, and I want to kind of wrap things up, and
Yes, sir.
And say peace to all y'all, man, and love, man, and I hopefully I'll be back tomorrow, God willing.
Yeah, once again, man, I support the space. I support you strong. Hey, I mean, I'll be in the chat. Hey, I check people on some stuff they may be saying, or I promote the channel. I come to go to work for you.
Well,
You know what
I
I'm saying?
appreciate it,
I
brother,
work
man.
for
I
you,
thank
brother.
you, man. So yeah, I
I
appreciate it,
work for
man.
you.
And I don't worry about what people say about me, but thank you for holding my back, man. You know what I'm
Yes, sir.
saying? If
I
there's
work for you.
some negative bullshit being said, thank you
Right,
for
right. And
holding me up.
that's part of keeping the space integrity. You know what I mean?
Right.
Taking the mask off, because they'll say it in the chat and then act like it's okay. They'll low key say something and then go to try to blow up the channel. So
Yeah, but hey, man, that crab in the bucket shit, man. Look, this is bigger than me, and it's
yes, sir.
like Ron O'Neal said, man, this is bigger than me, man. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
sir.
Like this is
That's what I say. I
it's bigger than me.
maintain.
It's bigger than anybody getting petty or about something that was said that they didn't like, or some other little punk ass comment that was said that a motherfucker didn't like. Like if you don't
Yes,
like
sir.
it, get the fuck on. You don't have to tune in. Like
Well,
don't
that's
worry
the
about
point.
what I'm talking about. Like if you
That's the
don't like
point.
what I'm talking about, don't tune in. Get the fuck on. I mean,
That's the point.
it's just real simple. If you don't like what's being said, move on to somebody else's content. It's enough channels out here.
Yeah, but that's the point. See, because you will be engaged in the conversation up on the panel, right? And you don't necessarily have time to, get at whoever's in the chat saying some outlandish stuff. So we gotta make sure we take care of that so we can continue on with the lesson.
There you go.
We studying from the G with the PhD. You dig?
Hey, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for the accolades, my brother. Well, look, I'm gonna have to get up on out of here, man. I got some business to tend to, man. So
All right.
y'all be
All right.
peaceful, man. Love is always one, man.
Peace
All
and
right,
love.
bro.
Appreciate you.
Peace and love,
All
man.
right, shoot, man. All right,
there
Ian.
go, Fifth.
All right, peace, bro. Thanks.
All right,
One.
Yeah. I'm a phenomenon, I shine like Orion. I came in a rap gang to smack it up like Heron, transform it like Megatron. Wait, like Yamatron, most rappers are some peons. I'ma starve them like Ramadan, I'm troublesome. You don't really want no troublesome, cause I pop guns like hood chicks do bubble gum. I been dumb, gon' stay that way till kingdom come. When the sun I'm at, unleash a demon, a polygon. I'm heavy, son, got more knowledge than Farrakhan, more gang than Cap. Karma that bitch, some name done one. Stay lit off some Shandon, maybe Bacardi Ram, stay drink to some Nordstrom. Call me that Dapper Don, more violent than Genghis Khan. The members of Taliban, niggas faker than silicon. Get hit like a .com, like soldiers in Lebanon. I'm bringing that red rum. When I get through with you, son, you gon' think of C-Ram. Run! I carry weight like a heavyweight. Bake more cakes than patty cake. Watch the fiend salivate. You a lightweight, bantamweight. Better contemplate. If you violate, make you levitate to the pearly gates. I fascinate when I conversate from the show me state where these niggas love the hate and hot murder rate or the waste. But this flow is just a taste of God's grace. Shining this light in the ugly place. In the prophecy, got more wisdom than Socrates. Philosophies, you don't really want no parts of me. Can't you see? I'm slicker than Mephistopheles, stronger than Hercules, more dangerous than the Damocles. The MCs try and be pretty please. I wet up they white tees, knock them out they wallabies. Now they touch my deliries. For coming up shorter than little C's when I break out the killer bees. I study music like Ocassi, hit chicks look like Ashanti. When I'm breaking them off, they yell at odd poppy. You rack rappers is sloppy, you can't stop me with that. We can sorry, copy, Maloney. I'm a monster like Frankenstein, rock harder than Palestine. You slimes, dropping dimes, a snake and serpentine. Take stand and steamy glow like Nas with his big shine. All you haters cold in it, cold sores need calamine. But my hot shit like red bricks hitting your head. Leave the sour taste up in your mouth like lemon heads, like simply red. Wasted some years up in the fans when I touched down, already red that gave me head. I got higher vision for higher living, I'm highly driven. I'm acting women like it's some sort of sick religion. Driving an Impala, sitting on it, these 20 inches, and they spinning just like the planets in the solar system.
Black country people, over in Africa, down to America. Black country people, we make all the world go round and around, yes. Black country people, up in Canada, down to Jamaica. Black country people, we make all the world go round and around.